I warmly welcome all of you on a Sunday afternoon when all of you could have been doing something really different on Talent and Technology Reimagine Conference 2022. I'm Aisha Tariq Sethi, founder of Sethi Learning and Company and the host for today. So a really warm welcome from my end. The reason why we are all here today is to truly embrace with an open mind and spirit that we're living in revolutionary times where technology is moving faster than our imagination. Think about it. Now it's humans plus tech rather than humans versus tech. And it's our job to figure out how talent combines its unique ability to collaborate and create to make the most out of technology. With technology at the base of all that a business does and touching every function, be it HR, ops, procurement, or finance, talent will need very different skills to succeed in the future, and the role of leadership will need to transition from directing to orchestrating performance. So, before we go forward with rethinking and reimagining how we lead to talent, let's look at the history of management. It all goes back to the time of Henry Ford and Frederick Taylor and the dawn of assembly lines, where the rule of thumb was if you can get obedient people to do what they did yesterday, faster, cheaper, and better, you can grow your business. These ideas worked for a long time. They still do until they don't anymore. When the world changes faster than ever, you cannot manage your way out of it, probably because you don't know how to go forward. And for this very reason, we have gathered futuristic thinkers today with foresight of how things are changing to crowdsource ideas on how we need to start thinking differently about the way we work together as part of the unfolding domestic and global economy. Our mission today is to help you see things differently so you can't unsee them. And on that note, I would like to invite Mr. Faisal Kamar. He is the co-founder and managing partner at HRSG BPO, and he's been instrumental in bringing the concept of business process outsourcing to developing economies. Prior to joining HRS, Mr. Faisal served as Group COO at Sitco Group in the UAE, as CFO at Pakistan Textile Company, and the General Manager of Financial Developments at the Arkin Group of Companies. So, can you please have a round of applause for Mr. Faisal?
Good afternoon, everyone. And Aisha, thank you very much for this honor. It's brilliant to be here with such young people all around. I will not take much time. I'll start with saying a few things. And the first is that there are about 63% most emerging cities in the world are in this part of the world. And the skill gap that we see in this part of the world is about 61%. And the age of population below 30 is more than 50% in our country, which our Prime Minister often talk. And this is the same scenario and when we talk about Asia. So the opportunities are in abundance, if not endless. So organizations are struggling for talent. High performers are difficult to retain. And at the same time, organization in the situation of shortage of skill gap, which is more in this part of the world than rest of the world. Over here, we have the skill shortage close to about 61%, as per Accenture, and which is far, higher than the rest of the world. Americas is about 30%, 31, 43%, and Africa and Middle East is about 31%. So what organizations need to do, what is about to come, I was wondering, looking at the higher population cities, in top 100 we have Hyderabad and Gujarat. So the thing is what is about to happen, and all is going to happen in this part of the world. We are a population of 220 million people, nothing can go wrong. everything is going to go right. So the thing is, we need a lot of optimism, to make sure. Coming back to corporate sector, we have to redesign, rethink integrated talent management system if you want to survive in this world. If we want to have those thinking what we used to think, if everything is not integrated today, there's going to be no retention of talent in your organization, whether from recruitment to retention, from onboarding to succession, and from performance management system to talent development. These are going to be one cycles if you want to sustain in this world. And people who will be doing it will have the sustainable advantage, and that's what will be, dying down with time. Brilliant time for startups to come in Pakistan. I was started about 12 years ago, and it's a brilliant startup. Now, the brand Decibel. I process close to about 250,000 payslip a month. That's what I do in Pakistan. And I run a cloud, which has the talent management module as well. And when I say talent management modules, everyone asks me about talent management. They take the demos, but at the end of the day, when it comes to implementation, we need to deal with FUD. You all understand FUD? Fear, uncertainty, doubt. We come across often. But now it's the time that beyond this FUD, we need to understand, and we should stop ignoring technology when it comes to talent management systems. In future, there's not going to be that I want to have success factor, I want to have Decibel, I want to have Workday. We're going to have everything together. I have close to about 50 implementations in Pakistan with multinationals where I'm working with success factor on one side. I'm working with the BI and Microsoft, and then I'm posting JD into SAP. So we need to get out of that rigidity that we have to have only one system. And there are only three things I would like to say, and then we'll close the show. What HR would need to do. First of all, HR need to be tech savvy. If you guys are thinking that the tech decisions are for IT, you will be constantly failing. If you don't know what cloud is all about, when you don't know about what mobile technologies are all about, the thing is, it's a recipe to failure. Now, HR has to stop outsourcing their decisions for numbers to finance and to technology to IT. They have to be sponsors of their own decisions. If you're not a technologist, in times to come, HR will become not relevant. And people in HR who are going to be tech savvy are going to be leading shows in different organizations. And that is one most critical part. Everywhere I go, I tell HR people, that's tough, letting IT meet the vendor alone. This is your area, you need to be worried about information technology. You don't need to ask IT to be worried about information technology. Second, being the functional head, you have to be, well versed, with the technology part of it. Don't start with the employee tracking or, from vendor. Don't talk about 9 boxes from day one. Don't talk about those things, and, we're far ahead to your current situation. I was talking to my wife, she's right here, and I was telling her that, in Pakistan, IPOs are going to come, and when IPOs are going to come, there will be no talent acquisition team in the company. This is what is going to happen. RPO is the fastest growing RPO outsourcing process in the world. But when you talk about these things, we start with FUD, right? The thing is the same thing FUD. So what we need to overcome it and believe in transition. When I say believe in transition, nothing is going to happen overnight. And third, and the last, where I leave your thoughts, is that technology is not going to do everything. Half technology will do, half you will have to. Because we can't blame technology if we can't implement everything in one go. So being a technology savvy, believe in transition, and at the same time, start loving technology, because in the future, that's what we all are going to do. I'm very happy to be here, and I congratulate once again Aisha for putting up a wonderful show. Thank you very much for
Hello. So, thank you so much, Faisal. for the wonderful remarks. And he's right, it's just not enough to have systems like Decibel and SAP just like working in parallel to each other and just want to make a system. It's about playing the role of an alchemist these days. You need to come together to figure out what going digital truly means, and in order to go digital, what are the systems that need to come together and weave together into fine digital architecture. So thank you so much, Faisal, for showing us a big picture. And with that, we would now like to go towards a panel discussion. I'm so glad to have everyone here. We have a fantastic panel, quite experienced, futuristic thinkers, I would like to say. So, the topic of today's panel discussion is rethinking talent in technology-enabled organizations. How do you manage talent differently in technology-enabled organizations? A goal for today is to seek inspiration and at the same time also to crowdsource actionable insights on how we can actually start acting and thinking differently. So there are a lot of panel conversations which happen which talk about this can be done, this is how it should be done. But when you actually go inside the organization, the reality is quite different. So just to quickly introduce our panelists, Mr. Tahir Javed, he is advisory partner at August Leadership, former CEO at HubCo, and VP HR at Bingo Corp. He talks actively about innovation, future of work, and is inspiration for many professionals across the industry. Then we have Mr. Jalal Karwali. He is the head of HR at Quick Life Assurance, former senior manager and consulting partner. Former senior manager consulting at Salat Heller, and he's constantly trying to find creative solutions to talent management challenges. Next, we have Mr. Ashaduddin Ahmed. He's the Vice President of Agri-Sciences and Chemicals Business at ICI Pakistan, former VP Marketing and CFO at Pingro. Arshad likes to lead by example and inspiration and has been a mentor of many in the industry. Then we have Satya Jivani. He is the founder at SmartChoice.pk, an insurance platform that helps consumers contrast insurance policies. He's worked at TPS for almost a decade in global ops and is super enthusiastic about the financial industry. I do try to follow his blogs from time to time. He talks a lot about insurance and all the changes that are taking place globally. Next, we have Qasim Shah. He's the founder and CEO at TradeMart, an e-commerce startup that recently raised $6 million in 3C funding. Formerly, Qasim led the role of Chief Customer Officer at Daraz and was the country head for Remax Media in Pakistan. Great to have you here, Qasim. Last but not least, we have Fahad Javed. He leads learning and OT at Daraz and has worked for Carnegie for a couple of years. Fahad is an energetic personality and pursues learning with full spirited dedication. So I think we have the right mix of panel on board to start our conversation for today. So, since we're talking about talent and technology, let's talk a bit about digitalization. So as we know, digitalization is touching each and every aspect of a business. So for example, take the example of Lean Fund. I worked there as part of the project team in 2016. And at that time, the goal was to explore how digitalization is touching each and every aspect of the supply chain. So we explored how 3D printing, data analytics, 3D design, changes in how we do raw material sourcing, all of this are being touched by digitalization. And the idea was to come up with an integrated way of like looking at all of that. So 3 to 4 years down the line, they've incorporated some of our recommendations in their 5-year plan. And the idea is to actually point out that we can no longer think that digitalization is only for, let's say, digital marketing or only for procurement or only for finance. It's there and it's going to accelerate. So, which takes us to our first question for today that I would like to ask the panelists. How has technology disrupted parts of your business, and how do you see technology changing the landscape of your industry in the next 1 to 2 decades? So,
Okay, such a good answer. Okay, Aisha, thank you very much. I'm so honored to be here talking about you. Uh, I just like can a little bit brief why I'm interested in this subject. When pandemic hit, I actually had a question in mind. What would 20, 50 years ago be? So I started looking at it more from academic views and trying to understand what the future of work. So when I started working in that area, I went to books, started reading, they were novel, and found out it's too far. So I brought my days to work for a daily living, which is still difficult to imagine because the speed of change is so dramatic and is so profound that it might be the similarity which those were talked about long ago. Right? So we might be there. Coming to your question, I've been in the industry, especially chemical industry, started with fertilizer and power industry. The changes which I have started seeing, some are hitting last month. I shared a session on industry 4.2 sometime in pandemic. Her question was, when will we plan it? The only answer I had, yes, and it has come and it doesn't need any permission. And we will be facing it day in, day out. The way the environment for our industry, or the industry which I have worked in, changing is, number one change is the IT, the internet devices which are coming in. They are getting embedded into various sensors in spaces. And on the top layer, talking to them are some kind of software, which goes and talks to something known as digital twins. So that's a replica of how the plant works. That those kind of changes are coming in there. And then simulation. So if I go and look for the future, maybe you will see plants running with fewer than 2 people. It's not something the subject of this discussion is how this technology is going to impact people who are left behind. So every revolution has its own victims. Somehow this digital revolution has a much larger impact on social. A lot of people who are with lower skills are going to be left behind. That's a subject of something. So it is the impact of it is going to be huge. The impact and the skill required are very significant. That's it.
So Tahir just mentioned about the changes that are taking place, especially in the chemical business and overall. I think the first thing which Asro also talked about was that I think the biggest change which is coming in, and I think every organization will have to adapt to, is that technology or being technology savvy or to basically plan your strategy based on technological advancement has to be a line management thing. Just the way we used to think about HSE, safety and everything had to be, and people management skills had to be developed at line management level. Same applies to the technology. As far as disruption is concerned, we see, on an individual basis, I remember most of you are much younger than me, but there was a time about 20, 30 years ago where it used to take half an hour for us to pay a single utility bill. We had to go to the bank, stand in the queue. There used to be that guy over there, who's zero with productivity and everything. Today, all you have to do is basically use internet banking and just pay off your bill. Look at all the advantages. Look at the startups. If you have to order, you don't have to find the number, contact number of different restaurants. They are there through Foodpanda or any other startups. You can actually go with that. In terms of coming to business, even in our business, one side of the business I look after is chemicals, other one is agri. In agri sciences, the precision agriculture which is coming in, which has come in very fast pace across the globe, and which is coming in very fast in Pakistan as well. I mean, the whole concept of satellite imaging and through the satellite data, converting it into information where you can actually go out to your customer or your farmers and let them know which part of their cultivated land needs soil replacement, or what is the condition or productivity of the soil. You can actually these days go out and predict the pest attack 3 months, 4 months before that pest attack is going to come in. So these technologies and applications are being seen across the globe. It's only a matter of time somebody gets hold of it and brings it into Pakistan. I think the whole digitalization thing has been very helpful to countries like ours, the developing countries, because there's no concept of spending decades of learning the skill and everything and R&D. It's only a matter of not inventing the wheel again, but going out, acquiring that skill and bringing it back to the country. And the whole paradigm is shifting. And I think from the organization's perspective, the agility has to be there. The acceptance will have to be there. It's not only from the organization's perspective, but also I would feel from the employee's perspective. I think organizations will have to play a very important role working together with academia to make sure that the skill set that is being taught in our universities and everything, that also covers this aspect as well. Otherwise, we'll lag behind. Unfortunately, our academia and the collaboration between the corporate sector and the academia has not been really productive. If I look at our history, but I think we are not we're left with no choice but to start working towards these areas. So I think from the both corporate side and the university side, I think a lot has to be done.
Michael, thank you. Asha, I think the question is directed to the left of you and not to the right of you, because to the right of you are nothing but technology disruptors. In life insurance, for us institutionalized, old, slow-moving, large-scale organizations, we have a concept called convergence, where traditionally siloed functions and departments are now overlapping. In my sector, life insurance, we are seeing dramatic convergence between technology, specifically applications like mobile development, backend network, data centers, etc., and life insurance operations, and it's touched every aspect of our business, from sales to customer care to operations, renewals, claims. All of this is now, whether it's for an individual customer, a group customer, a banker customer, almost every element and aspect of our core business, front facing, whether it's for sale or customer care, is now almost is actually entirely digital. Our customer interfaces are now available on cell phones. We are on mobile. Our post programs are now almost all entirely digital. Similarly, our sales agents now do not go hand in hand with the briefcase. The old life assurance agent who file folder leke aayega, baithega. No, it's almost all digital. Our sales agents know to grow the marketplace with cell phones and apps, where it's possible to actually turn around and give you an insurance investment proposal in seconds. And so similarly, we are also very active in exploring alternative sales channels in our organization, where we partner with people like aggregators, we partner with digital wallets, we partner with almost entirely in the digital landscape right now. Similarly, for non-business, for functions like myself in HR, very proud to announce and start the test. Our entire HR interface is now recently entirely on the cell phone. So how my employees now actually interface with my department
from a service perspective, is entirely from their cell phones. They can still call me, they can still email my team, but now they're shifting almost entirely to cell phones. So to say that technology has disrupted and changed the business, yes, absolutely. The core concept for organizations is convergence. How are previously traditional departmental frameworks now completely overlapping? I think it's fair to say that in a not too brief period of time, we will no longer be a life assurance company as much as we will be a fintech. And insurtech, sorry, is the more accurate term.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Alal, for your comments and.
It's universal.
Thank you so much. I think this side of the panel is unified that technology is like no part of the business is insulated by technology. We would like to hear more from the tech companies whose entire business model is based around technology. What are your thoughts, and is there any part of your business which you think is not touched by technology?
Wow.
Hello. Thank you, Aisha, for organizing this. And Bilkul saying that, so I think on the right side, we're from Smart Choice, Raz, and us. And everything for us is all about technology, right? And what I link technology is with data. So technology really helps us in identifying data points, being where we are. Operate decisions days is much easier. So I think anything we do from HR to operations to commercial or anything has to be tech enabled, has to be data centric, and without that, I don't think there's any way forward. Comparing ourselves to countries like Indonesia, India, वो बहुत आगे हैं, right? Like in terms of tech, and I mean, if we can get there, inshallah we will, obviously. I mean, this with our population, some people take it in a negative way, but I really feel that will be our strength, right? In terms of e-commerce penetration, in terms of actually having a tech-enabled economy overall will be very, very helpful. And obviously, previously at the RAS with Fahad as well, everything we do there, and I was there for 4 years, has to be backed by technology and data. And I'll let Fahad add a few words.
Absolutely. I think with us, the struggle is not if our business is impacted or if every facet of the business is impacted with technology. I think it's about how soon and how much. Because naturally, business transforms a lot more earlier than the rest of the support functions. But the gap that we have to close, I think that's reducing over time. And our entire business model, the startup model, is less impacted by technology, more about how societal acceptance towards technology is there. The more society agrees or adapts to the technology, the more we have to be 10 steps ahead of that, prepare for that. And I think absolutely that data, we're coming from a place where company was built to just go into hyper growth mode, where yes, different facets were being impacted by technology. Now, really thinking our own, challenging our own mindset, to be very honest, and really thinking of how and what to use and what to really pick when it comes to that data-driven decision making when it comes to our people and our business, our customers and whatnot. So I think it's here, but how do we pace ourselves with that? Because customer is delivering stuff in 10 minutes. I mean, how do you compete with that? So, and imagine the customers who he has. Imagine if those customers are my ones. They are used to getting stuff done in 10 minutes. What do I do? So the challenge is very real even for us.
I think हमारे वहाँ यही कहा जाता है दराज पे and Fahad and we used to joke around डेडलाइन अगर कोई चीज की 6 months बाद है तो बोलते थे 6 दिन में देना है। That's the concept, right? कि 6 दिन में कैसे करना है, that's up to you, and like I said कि वो tech और data की through वो चीज होती थी. We have a few people here from Dras and they can relate to it कि you know those are things we have to be agile. That brings things. आपने पूरा वक्त एक चीज हम कर रहे होते हैं, अचानक से the decision changes and the direction changes and you're like, this is the way we want to go. It's a complete 360, and again data आया, technology आई और उसी के basis पे decision हुए, and उसके बाद भी हुआ है कि 6 times direction change हुई, but the 7th time you nailed it, right? And that's the, again, through being agile and being technically good.
Assalamualaikum everyone. So as Aisha mentioned, Smartwood is an insurance marketplace. So when we started 5 years ago, insurance with tech on the customer side was very minimal. शायद SMS वगैरह आते थे आपको कि आपकी पॉलिसी रिन्यू हो गई है या आपकी पॉलिसी इशू हो गई है, and that was about it. And I never worked for an insurance company before. So for me, bringing tech to insurance was completely a different challenge, from finding talent to finding insurance companies, bringing insurance companies on board, and to actually getting the trust built on the customer side as well, that you can get this service within a few minutes. So it was a difficult task initially when we started off, but now the customer with tech in insurance, customers' expectations have really changed a lot, because with tech comes speed, with tech comes data, with tech comes customers' experience, and for us, the daily challenges is how to keep up with that expectation of the customer. With tech, with bringing the improvements all day long, be it on claims, be it on the issuance of the policy, be it on any modifications required in the policy. So this for us, tech is like day in, day out, breathe in, breathe out, right? And we can't think of anything else. So हमें तो पता ही नहीं कि पेपर वर्क कैसे होता है, हमें तो पता ही नहीं है कि वो कोई चीज वो 2 दिन बाद कैसे आ सकती है, ये तो आनी ही चाहिए 10 मिनट बाद या पॉलिसी 20 मिनट बाद, या वो मैं जाऊंगा ईमेल में और वो चीज पड़ी हुई होगी वहां पर. So for us, we are looking ahead at things, and I think this is the future. This is what the customer demand from us as we move forward on a daily basis. So, yeah.
Thank you, Satyan. Are we all aligned with the fact that technology's acceptance is there in our organizations, like on 360-degree basis? Because what I've seen typically is that while technology is good to talk about, and I'm like not talking about the tech companies per se, but I'm talking from the corporate perspective. Technology is great to talk about, but when it actually comes to having that acceptance at the grassroots level, we do face challenges, we do face resistance to change. Can anyone from corporate shed some perspective on how do we actually deal with that, and how do we bring this acceptance at the grassroots level? Anyone?
Very good question, Aisha. And I think it's not a matter of resistance or how to create the awareness and acceptance. I mean, if you don't do it, someone else will do it. And then once your competition does it, then you're forced to go ahead. There are always organizations who are the leaders. There are always organizations who are the followers, and then there are the laggards. Like any consumer on an individual basis, also whenever there is a new iPhone launch, there are people who are the early adopters who are out there in the lines, standing there for 16 hours before the thing opens and they get it. Same applies to organizations. But the difference is it's a matter of survival now. And as I mentioned, in agri-sciences, if there is an organization which creates an infrastructure whereby they're able to supply information to the consumers, per se the farmers, as to what the condition of the soil is, how do they need to improve the yield and productivity, And all that information, rather than an organization which waits for its employees to go into the field, take the data, come back, and the same information is delivered after 10, 14 days, rather than the competition which is providing it in a day's time. I mean, that is where the difference is, and that is where the competitive advantage or becomes your disadvantage. So from that perspective, technology, it gives you huge amount of data, and the organizations have to convert that data into actionable information. And then the thing doesn't end over there. That actionable information needs to be converted into implementation. So it's a three-step process, and even if you lag behind in any one of this, you will be lag behind. So the point is that you have to, do you want to be the early adopters or do you want to lag behind? Because I can assure you, there is not going to be any survival for people or the organizations who will be lagging behind.
When you look at an organization, they run in the context and the businesses they are in. And that's what drives a change. If you look at a chemical plant, or a fertilizer plant, and the tech startup, Mr. Dan is talking about, their reality and existence is in the business models they have. If I take a look at a power plant, it's more specific about it. Very heavy barrier to entry markets. So their need to change is very high. Their survival is changing. So it depends which industry you're in. What people need to realize, and that realization is coming, it's not coming, it's creeping, that the model is going to disrupt because of availability of data at a sensor level and places which they never thought would be available. Machines will become more intelligent, they will tell you what's wrong with them, they will tell you what time to take it down. So that would bring that change. So that threat is not there right now. The change comes from either imminent threat you're facing or somebody very, very visionary who would sense the change. So just equating the context of each other becomes very challenging. Whenever you're looking at change, you need to look at the context, the environment, the business dynamics, and what the business spaces are. There are going to be changes. There are going to be changes in the way they do business, the way they collect data, the way they make decisions. In supply chain, changes will be much faster, manufacturing will be much slower. So it depends which area you're in. Thanks.
Anyone else would like to add something?
I don't think it's a question of is anyone resistant to change. Any kind of change comes with its opposition. This change management strategy is to deal with it. The only real victim of technology and modernization was not a human being, not Luddites, it was the horse. The horse is the only real victim of modernization. You've heard me say that. You go into our organizations and you talk to even the वो बंदा जिसके दिल की गहराइयों से उसको technology से such deep नफरत है. If you ask that person to their face, do you believe that technology is the future of change the organization? So बिल्कुल, किसने कहा? Obviously, it's an accepted reality. The question really in front of us now isn't about change. It's about when, where, and how much.
Thanks, Jalal. I think we're all unified on the fact that technology is hitting organizations, no matter what size it is. Disruption is happening at every level. Which brings me to my next question, which is about talent. So, how is today's talent different from that of the previous generations in terms of their working styles and result orientation? So, whoever would like to take it.
I think for us, I think tech में there's one thing we call you can't micromanage. That's the only example I give कि अगर आप micromanage करेंगे तो आप कभी टेक के अंदर सक्सेसफुल एज अ लीडर कंपनी नहीं बन सकते. People graduate, DFLPs on the रास्ते leadership program होते. वहाँ पे I mean a person just graduated from one of the universities. आप उसको इतना बड़ा प्रोजेक्ट दे रहे हैं, बट आप उसको रूल दे रहे हैं कि यार गलती करो, सही करो, मुझसे एडवाइस लो, मैं गाइडेंस दूंगा, बट खुद फिगर आउट करो. मेरे पास प्रॉब्लम मत लेके आओ, सोल्यूशन लेके आओ, राइट? एंड दैट्स द मेंटालिटी वी फॉलो कि ओनरशिप or as a leader you can't micromanage. Yes, you give guidance. Guidance is very different than micromanaging. But ये पूछना है सुबह 9 बजे क्यों नहीं आए, सुबह 10 बजे क्यों नहीं आए, ये चीज हम नहीं कर सकते. और जिसके साथ जिसने की भी है ना, and we have multiple examples, not naming any companies, but I know a few people, and वो यही कहते हैं कि यार we just can't work there in what we call, it becomes a toxic environment as well, right? So I personally never had anyone micromanage me, and that's from the start when I started my career. And and my father is a traditional businessman in Pakistan, and मैं उनको तंग करता हूँ कभी-कभी, और वो अभी भी जब महीने की चाय की पत्ती का बिल आता है तो he approves it, and he said मुझे पता होना चाहिए कि मेरे क्या expenses हो रहे हैं. And obviously he's right from his angle, right? But मैं उनको ये समझाता हूँ अगर आप थोड़ा सा autonomy देंगे, but वो उनका mindset अलग है, वो बिल्कुल अलग तरीके से था, and he's mashallah been successful in what he's doing, right? So I'm no one to say anything to him or disrupt him, but the tech-enabled businesses, I think, micromanagement is something you can't do, and that's the only thing that helps people develop. And I mean, there's so many examples of this, right?
So, building on to what Qasim said, and I think he was there in this experiment, attendance is not going to work. It's not going to work.
इन्होंने ग्रास पे ये लगाया था कि सुबह 9 बजे या 10 बजे आना है, वरना आपकी सैलरी कटेगी. अब मैंने कहा यार हमारा काम ही सुबह 11 बजे शुरू होता है, मार्केट 12 बजे खुलती है, मैं टीम को बोलूं कि नहीं सदर जाके 10 बजे खड़े हो जाएं टू सोर्स मोबाइल्स, कैसे हो सकता है? हुआ ये कि people actually came at 10 and 6 p.m. they left, and the markets are hot at 6 p.m. in Southern या चंडीगढ़ रोड, तो वो तो कॉल मैसेज करते थे टाइम खत्म हो गया. And I think 2 दिन का
it was a nightmare of an experiment. And I think that's where we also learned that we really have to study every facet of the business and really understand, again, from the societal change, with the society and our people dealing with society, how do we have to shape our policies and whatnot. So first of all, hating the word policy here, obviously. So attendance is not going to work. I think that's a sign for how different this entire talent optimization is all working in companies like us, where yes, we have to have some sort of rules, but some. Also, another thing that we experimented with that, how traditionally you come to a company and so if you right now ask, I think everyone in this room that how many are now transforming the company, and almost everyone would raise their hand, transforming, digital transformation or HR transformation or some sort of transformation in that. But so one thing, so in that phase, when we started that, I think we came with detailed policy, 13 pages and 14 pages and whatnot, and we experimented after 2 years. We experimented with just one page, 10 to 12 instructions on a particular topic, and that's it. And people enjoyed, implemented it themselves, and followed it through, and we don't have to go through compliance to see, okay, how many people are doing it or not. With those 13 pages, which made no sense and had a lot of flowery language, let's be very honest, which were, some part of it was definitely copy-pasted from somewhere, without thought there. But, so that's not working. So people right now, our employees right now, that's not working. And we are learning through a lot of trial and error, let's be very honest. We have made friends with shamelessness, because when we launch these things, it's at times it blow up in our faces, and we're perfectly okay with it. This is how we expect it. In fact, in our business, something that Qasim was saying, so I was talking to SSIR MD one day, and he said, "But the best part of our company is that we'll give you, if you have an idea and it's backed by data, and you want $10,000 for it, we'll give you those $10,000. And if you fail, which is fine, if you put the effort, you've done everything, and even then if you fail, I'm not going to follow you with a baseball bat. We just want to throw people with monster projects, even if in our DMO program. We throw them, we throw monster projects at them, and we see how much they can tolerate, withstand, and shine, and thrive. And we keep throwing that. And after 18 months, they are a different breed altogether. Even with our employees, that's how it works. So it's not a very structured way. Yes, there has to be structure, some sort, yes, to some extent. But it's definitely not going to be and apologies for all the fans of Dave Woodruff over here. It's not going to be that traditional Gora thing that's going to work. It's not going to be a copy pasting, and it's also a lot of decision making where we have to decide what we want to go with. Are we following the Amazons where only once in the lifetime of an employee who has spent 2 years at training would happen? Or is it the Ubers who's got HBX Live and they're constantly making people for their Uber launcher academy? So we have to decide which way we have to go, and that decision will only be made after a lot of experimentation.
From my perspective, I think one of the major things is hiring in the tech companies or startups. Our employees are actually looking for companies which are more value-based, purpose-driven, which is aligned to their values, which is aligned to their purpose. Be it anything, be it in e-commerce, be it in financial technology, but it has to solve a purpose, which is solving for a greater humanity, for their society, for their country. Because it's no longer job is a means to end. कि ऐसे पैसे कमाने और कहीं जाना है यार एक ट्रिप लगाना है जरा पैसे कमाते हैं सेविंग्स करते शादी करनी है ट्रिप लगाना है whatever. It's no longer that. That is also there. Like now employees are saying मुझे ट्रिप लगाने हैं साल के मैं 2 महीने की ट्रिप लगाता हूँ मुझे 10 महीने काम करूँगा लेकिन 2 महीने की छुट्टी चाहिए ये 30 दिन 15 दिन मेरे से नहीं चलता और कुछ करेंगे और उसमें मैं काम भी कर लूँगा वो मैं पहाड़ में बैठे काम कर लूँगा मैं ठीक है ना but I want this thing but I'll get you where you want me to take this organization and I think you need that positive energy because you will not find every person in your company like that. You will find a few people, and that positivity is what will drive other people in the organization to work towards the goal of the CEO or the founder. Because he cannot be everywhere. He cannot be in every meeting room. He cannot be in every discussion. He cannot be at that chai ka discussions which employees have at after office hours and where they bash the founders or whatever decision makers की क्या policy बना दी और क्या कर रहे हैं और हम भी उसी फेज से गुजर चुके हैं so we know how they talk and what they go through but I think it's having that person in that conversation who's on your side and so वो जो team है वो जो लोग हैं I think that's very critical for you to have और वो लोग बड़ी flexibility चाहते हैं वो बड़े purpose चाहते हैं बड़ी वो घर पे जाए तो वो जो ना घर वालों को भी इतने फखर से बताए कि यार क्या काम करते हैं ठीक है ना घर वालों को समझ में कुछ नहीं आ रहा वो बोल रहे हैं 10 मिनट लीव की क्या जरूरत है इंश्योरेंस की क्या जरूरत है कौन लेता है इंश्योरेंस ठीक है ना people are sorry to say but nothing against you but even in insurance side people are saying that insurance खरीदने की क्या जरूरत है मतलब कौन खरीदता है insurance but there is this purpose behind this which drives them to take this flag or this thing forward among the masses and among the society and among the people they walk around. So yeah, I think values and purpose are the most biggest thing for resources now.
Thank you so much, Sipten. I think we can agree on two things over here. Yes. So I think we can agree on two things for what we've concluded so far. Ek to 2 month structure is not good for technology-enabled organizations, predominantly because it slows things down. And then today's generation or the upcoming talent is looking for more autonomy, more empowerment, and they want to be part of something bigger. They want to see how what they do every single day is making a purpose towards a betterment of society. How it's adding value to the greater good, and I think that's what motivates them, and that's the single most reason to wake up in the morning. But one thing which I would like to raise, something I have experienced while leading emerging talent, is कि जब हम उनको बहुत ज़्यादा autonomy भी दे देते हैं, they don't know what to do with it, because this is because our education system our universities and our schools brainwash them so much into obedience and like doing, just like following instructions and not thinking for themselves, that when you give them, it's your free ground and like, just, I want this result. You're like, okay, then how do we get there? And then that is when the challenge comes in.
That's
So,
what the management comes.
yeah, so please share your.
Just to add to what you said, I think there are no right answers to it. And this thing is going to vary from industry to industry. There are certain industries, for example, chemical industries, where employees have to deal with hazardous materials. Those industries will have to be bureaucratic. They will have to have certain bureaucratic guidelines or policies which are to be there, and that is for their own safety. Similarly, if there is a manufacturing concern, which mainly depends on manufacturing, where the operations are run shift by shift by shift, there the attendance part will have to be there. I mean, you can't let people decide whether they're going to come at 10 or come at 8. So you have to have a complete shift for a certain operation to take place. I think, if I look at my example, probably 20, 25 years ago, when I had started my career, I mean, the whole corporate world was going through the same phase. I mean, there was influx of emails, the letters done with it, and we started faxing the communication. The emails are there. There used to be a dial-up network. The Wi-Fi are here. So my generation also went through seeing a lot of changes that happened, and I saw good organizations continue to adapt to those changes. So it's all about managing the expectations of the employees. My generation had we were viewing so many changes, so our expectations were different from the generation that came before us. And similarly, I think the same concept applies right now. It depends on the industry. It depends on the requirement of certain industries and the expectations of the employees as well. So I think this is where the organizations for the last 100 years, they have been adapting, learning, and then trying and testing. Sometimes the decisions may go wrong, sometimes they will be right. So the concept is all organizations will have to keep on learning till they find the right combination of actions that they take. And this will continue. I think this is just the start, and the kind of changes that are coming in and the pace at which they are coming in. I mean, the agility of organizations will have to play a very key role.
I don't think we should be approaching our people and talent and basing our decisions on how we manage them on Kalka generation and Mera generation, Rajka generation. It's just quick. It makes great article shirts and it's nice for research, but practically it has no value. We exist on continuums. The answers that we heard from here, I found very enlightening because they were less about what is expected from the employee, but more about your attitudes and approaches towards how you manage your employees. How old are you? 5 years, Daraz, how old? Less than 10, less than 5. We here are what you one day aspire to grow up to become. Right? And inshallah, bigger and better, and the sky's the limit. Our attitudes and approaches and the kind of value that we add to our people and the sort of people we look for are not the sort of people we approach. So I think it makes more sense to approach the question of how we manage our people in terms of value additions. What is the value addition that they provide to us and what do we provide to them? What are the experiences that we provide? What is it that creates that stickiness between an individual employee and the organization? I mean, we're all looking at, average retention rates of what? 18 to 24 months? And that's not just for you, it's for us also.
Sometimes less for us.
Sometimes less. Yes, same. Same. We're all in the same boat.
12 months they want to.
We're all in the same boat. So you see, again, the challenge isn't generational then. The challenge is, and this is what we were discussing earlier, we are sitting on a suite of HR tools that say are going to do talent management for us. We are sitting on a suite and ecosystems of technologies that we can bring to bear to solve this problem. But the problem is, and the underlying assumption is that that person's going to stick around long enough to be a part of the talent management program. They're not. They're just not. That's the real challenge. And to my mind, the question isn't generational. Aaj ka generation, kal ka generation. The question is, why should that person work for you? And similarly, employees should be able to answer for themselves that why, that magical, mysterious why. Like, if I have been in EFU Life now for 5.5 years, and if I take a look at my career, I think I'm going to be there a lot more because EFU Life for me is pushing that button. EFU Life gives me the answer, tells me my why. If we can find that why, replicate it, duplicate it, पानी में घोल के तमाम employees को पिला दें, I think we can actually have a more enlightened conversation about how to better manage our people.
If you reflect back on the question, you will get the answer. Question you started.
It's about how we need talent in the digital age.
So, I think so. We touched on their perspective. I tend to believe on the right side of this. Your right side. Okay. Because the kids were emerging, I fathered 3 kids. They don't listen to us anymore. They have a mind of their own. I think that's a good thing. They're digital natives. They were born with all the digital tools. We have to adopt. That's what they basically do. They're more purpose driven. They're more focused as to what they want out. They want a balance between game and work. When they work, it's work. They won't take off. And so that is the kind of talent which is emerging. That is the kind which is going to be faced by bigger organizations. Would they be able to absorb and understand that kind of talent? So I'm working with a company which is the average age. Get the average age right, the height. That's the kind of company. So I am the average age. So for me, it was dramatically different going from a bread and mortar company to a company which is full of kids with energy and who don't have minor problems and really used to it. That is the environment which is emerging. But the issue which I see is the institution which I should also touch upon. And the ecosystems are there, they're not making them ready. And that is probably the cost of making them ready is very heavy on companies and on the companies. And that is a subject which requires some kind of liberation. How do you make them tech ready? And how do the tech industries will come now if we won't produce the tech guys they need. We all want to Philippines and design. I see challenges and I see changes and different industry needs to start understanding the ways that we can take stuff.
Thank you so much. It's very enlightening to hear Tahar's perspective on this. It's true, we have young people coming up who want empowerment, who are tech savvy, who have a mind of their own. But again, this is a plus, but this is a minus as well. It's a minus because sometimes they don't understand the deeper nuances, or they don't see through the traps and just like rush through things, which is not always good. Speed is great, but sometimes you just need to think things through as well. Which brings me to a similar question, and I think our audience would also like to hear more about it. That what are the challenges of leading talent in the digital age? So,
Right. So, जहाँ पे purpose है, value है, where there is all this and the flexibility that they demand, there also comes the challenge of discipline as well at certain times, and not falling in line, but actually, there is a not everyone will agree on a certain point of view, and that's where you find that resistance of moving towards a bigger goal. Which initially, because the problem with not the problem, but actually the beauty of startups is about agility, right? You move forward, and what you started on, and let's say what you were hired with, an employee was hired at a certain, when the company was looking at something else, कि हम ये करने जा रहे हैं. 6 months down the road, the demand comes from somewhere else, and the company has to take a shift. And at that point, these, kids, or I would say the generation, वो उस चीज को बहुत आसानी से absorb नहीं करती, उस चीज को follow नहीं करती है. And for us, for what personally I do is that I keep my main team in loop on these things even before they're happening, and this is where the trust comes in. This is where the currency of trust is really plays a role. So I would rather make a decision in silo and taking that call and then just telling them what to do, because I've done that mistake in the past where I've done things and I've told them this is now we're heading, or because this is what making more sense. This is where we're getting traction. This is where we are actually getting more revenue, good and demand as well, and then just dictating it rather than so. I think it's for me, what I've learned over a period of time is that you have to trust them. And they love this. These with the new generation, they love this when someone trusts them, because ये जो आपने भी बात की कि आपके 3 बच्चे हैं, उनमें और आप में थोड़ा सा कहीं ना कहीं ट्रस्ट वाला भी आ जाता है कि वो बात आपसे शेयर करेंगे तो आप उसका रिएक्शन कैसे देंगे, तो वो शेयर भी नहीं करते खुल के, कर जाएंगे तो बता करते.
We are more deeper secrets than.
So I think ये जो upcoming है, talent है, इसको trust deficiency भी है इसके साथ environment के अंदर, ecosystem के अंदर. So if we organization, what we believe is that we trust them, even उनको 6 महीने ही क्यों ना हो, क्योंकि वैसे ही उसकी लाइफ 1.5 साल है, तो टाइम इसमें कम स्पेंड करना है तो उसको जल्दी ट्रस्ट करना, बिकॉज बाकी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में उसको 3 साल लगते हैं कि सीनियर मैनेजर बनाएंगे, एक जगह पे बिठाएंगे, किसी डिनर पे लेके जाएंगे, देखिए कितना ट्रस्ट कर सकते नहीं कर सकते उसके ऊपर, एक तो बातें बताएंगे, देखिए कितनी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में घूमती है वो बात. सो यहाँ पर जो ना हम लोग उसको I've been part of the corporate world, so I know how this works. So मैंने दोनों sides देखी थी, so I know how this is fed and done in the certain part of the world. So I have learned this कि नहीं, इसको जो ना जल्दी trust कर लो and make it part of the decision, make part of the organization, and this is how I address this problem of lack of discipline or lack of following in a certain. So if you keep them in loop, if you keep them in direction, they would understand why this is happening. Even if it is happening, which they may not agree with completely initially, but they would believe the founder story and founder reason for that. So yeah.
So then do they always respond to your trust as well, or there's sometimes when all of that doesn't work, and then what do you do?
Actually, वो started एक है ना कि hire fast, fire faster. So वो आपको भी करते
यार मैं थोड़ा सा यहाँ पर जलाल उससे पहले बात कह रहे थे, तो कह रहे थे मैं थोड़ा सा आई थिंक आई वुड इंक्लाइन टुवर्ड्स दैट थिंग, बिकॉज़ एक और चीज आई थिंक इट्स द सेम चैलेंज. इट्स नॉट कि वी हैव डिफरेंट चैलेंजेस, मतलब सो 2,500 लोग हायर होने हैं, 2.5 हफ्ते का टाइम है, वी फाइंड देम, वी हायर देम टू फॉर कॉन्ट्रैक्चुअल डिलीवरीज एंड ऑल ऑफ दैट, वी हायर देम, वी फाइंड देम, do their COVID checks, tests, certificates, police verification, all of that, train them, onboard them on the app, get them to deliver more than 1 million parcels in a week, And then based on the performance, with clear expectations that some of them will be kept, and some of them will be, off the hook. So we do all of that in 3 to 4 weeks. That is a huge challenge when I talk to people usually in the traditional space. It is a huge challenge for them. That's not a challenge for us. But I'm not talking about these operational challenges. I'm actually talking about what they mentioned, the why. And I agree, yes, we need to communicate the why, but the challenge comes when the why is a little tainted. बात आप लोग बिल्कुल ठीक है, I agree with that. But जब थोड़ा सा taint होता है, वो कैसे taint होता है? To start up, there is a why के बारे में बात कम और GMV के बारे में बात ज़्यादा होती है. Let's be very honest, right? हमारे whys के posters नहीं लगे होंगे, बिल्कुल नहीं लगे होंगे, लेकिन हमारे GMV के numbers लगे होंगे. तो बात हुआ है कि हम कह तो ये रहे हैं और हमने साइमन सिनेक से सुना ही है सब इस रूम में जितने लोग टॉक अबाउट द व्हाई और जो हमारे मिलेनियल्स हैं या जेन एक्स हैं ये सारी बात करते हैं कि जी मतलब 6 महीने में मैं क्या करूंगा, मुझे लगता है मुझे छोड़ देना चाहिए, ये सारी बात करते हैं लेकिन हम उसको अप्लाई नहीं. प्रॉब्लम एप्लीकेशन में आती है. ये ठीक है, प्रॉब्लम आ जाती है एप्लीकेशन में जब वो डाइल्यूट हो चुका होता है. हमारा व्हाई हम कह रहे होते हैं, पोस्टर्स जीएमवी के लगे, वाटर कूलर्स में जो तस्बीह हो रही है, वाटर कूलर कॉन्वर्सेशन में जो तस्बीह हो रही है कुछ और हो रही है, बोर्ड रूम में तस्बीह कुछ और हो रही है. तो ये मुझे लगता है कि फर्स्ट चैलेंज नहीं है, सेम है अक्रॉस द बोर्ड, इज द सेम चैलेंज. आई वाज इनवाइटेड फॉर एन असाइनमेंट, आई वेंट देयर और वहां पे सीईओ से बात होने का मुझे लगता है मेरे लोग जो है ना वो कल्चर नहीं समझ रहे हैं और देखो ये हमने इतनी जबरदस्त वैल्यूज लगाई और ये सब हुआ है तो और भी बोर्ड मेंबर्स बैठे हैं ना, तो सबने भी कहा नहीं हमें कल्चर का हिस्सा होना चाहिए. बट उन्होंने बात की. And I had a smoke session with a couple of them for a week and whatnot. उसके बाद मैंने आगे बोला कि सर बुरी न्यूज़ ये है कि आपके अलावा कोई भी ये नहीं समझ रहा, इवन वो 12 लोग जो बैठे हैं. तो ये चैलेंज वहाँ पर भी, ये चैलेंज यहाँ पर भी है. तो मुझे नहीं लगता कि हमें टेक की वजह से इस चैलेंज को फर्क करना चाहिए. वो वाई का चैलेंज हर जगह है, उसकी एप्लीकेशन का चैलेंज that's there very real. And with the speed it's getting even more difficult to over communicate the why. हम तो basic communication में we're staying behind. Over communication करनी चाहिए, वो भी नहीं. Second is when we talk about challenge, we talk about the operational challenge. That can solve. हो जाएगा. Pay के issues में decibels there, solve it. Talent लाने के issues में हाँ होंगे, बिल्कुल होंगे, but over time you learn कि किस तरह लाना है. In our company, talent acquisition is a separate domain. It's not part of talent management. Reward के हैं, I heard Food Panda was doing something with Bitcoins. Again, innovative नहीं कह रहे solution, that's what I'm saying. But these are very operational problems. I think what we struggle with is something what they said when she said, yeah, what do we miss? And I think Jalal and you said it's the management. This management is something that we lack, and I'm going to be openly vulnerable about it. Yes, we are the trailblazers. Yes, we'll burn the midnight oil and we have no problem with it. Yes, we'll throw monster projects at people and they'll get developed and get the work done. Work done is secondary. That'll get done. Not a problem. Yes, we are very courageous to do experiments, but at the same time, it's the challenge that we face is that because we are cool in a lot of other places, we forget that there are very simple, uncool things. If we don't work on ourselves, on our own management, on really changing ourselves rather than disrupting the industry, because that disruption needs to happen inside as well. Because if we're not doing that, then that's the problem. So that also is a problem, that yes, as people who we disrupt the industry and whatnot, we are still too afraid to disrupt ourselves. Being vulnerable and open about it. And yes, that's
a big that's same here.
Fahad very rightly said. I think that also brings us back to the question and challenge of organizational design. The reporting lines आपकी there are 3 to 4 layers, right? So the problem of communication becomes more pronounced, I think, because along every line, the person really needs to believe in the why and then empower their respective teams to believe in the why. And I think that's how the communication happens, right? So your team leader believes in it, and every single day you walk into the office and like, oh, this is why you're doing it, this is why you're part of it. I know it all sounds very idealistic in theory, but practically speaking, I did have to experience organizations जहाँ पे the VMV, the vision, mission, and values, and the why is actually communicated and instilled, and it's part of the DNA of the organization. As it is said, कि वो water coolers पे और posters पे हर जगह आ जाता है, but how do we make all of this the part of the DNA of the culture of the organization? So I think a bit about culture and how do we hardwire culture in terms of the VMV, how do we go about all of this? Anyone?
As far as Aisha culture is concerned, I think technology or no technology, I think most of the things like other areas will remain the same. As also mentioned, it's how you implement. Culture starts with the core value system of every organization to remain as it is. Earlier, there have always been issues in terms of communicating to the employees. That will still remain the same. So how you live with your culture and how basically the leadership of the organization is inclined towards inculcating that culture remains a challenge, as it has been for so many decades. It will continue to be a challenge. I think one of the solutions which most of the organizations have found is to make the structure as flat as possible. So the flat structure has worked towards it in terms of making sure the communication remains at a better level instead of having 10 levels of different grades, and person at level 1 thinks about it and it keeps on diluting by the time it reaches level 10. So it's like a Chinese whisper. So I think that has come in. Most of the organizations have got very flat structures. I think as far as the communication bit is concerned, with the technology coming in, I think that has also advanced to a much positive level, because now the CEO or the division head or the management, they don't have to travel all across the country before they can communicate them. And then again, it doesn't take 3 months or 6 months. Again, the whole travel plan has to be done. So with the technology, with Zooms and MS Teams and everything, that communication has come very, very effective and very frequent. So I think that has helped. So in terms of cultural challenges, I think the training and the retraining part has to be there. People have to be trained to adopt the or adapt to the technological advancement that is taking place. The way the businesses have to be conducted, the business model disruption that may have to come in, I think that part needs to be taken to every level of employee. But the value system remains as is, and I think value system will have to be kept and continue to be kept at the core of an organization.
So one of the things that for me culture is like whatever culture you develop as a company, I think it उसको grow करना और उसको foster करना in the environment. The major thing is the hiring part. I think it begins from the hiring part, because I strongly believe that you can't किसी का जो value system है, उसका जो reason है काम करने का, culture आपने वहीं पे fit check करना है कि वो culture fit है कि नहीं. Because with startups you don't have a lot of time to spend on culture. You don't have time to make him follow a certain part of things that you want to do. So for me, I think, and I still take interviews. Because they're small organizations, they're not like as big as the Raj or Trademark. We are still in 40, 50 people organization. So whenever I'm hiring for a critical role, even for a non-skill critical role, for me at the time of hiring, I have to make sure. बाकी सारे interviews होने के बाद मेरा जो interview check होता है वो concept fit नहीं होता. For me, because मैं नहीं believe करता कि ये इसको आप बाद में बहुत ज़्यादा inculcate कर सकते हैं. थोड़ा सा movement होनी चाहिए, लचक होनी चाहिए, flexibility होनी चाहिए. That should be there. And willingness to learn for me is the most important part of the culture as a company. It's important because regardless of how much experience he's coming in with, If he's not ready to learn, if he's not ready to experiment, if he's not ready to listen from his peers or people who are going to be reporting to him, that person is, for me, is not a culture fit. So for me, it really starts at that point.
It's interesting to me that you define culture as practice. These are management practices you talk about. And that's your definition of culture. That's actually a very good way of going about it. And then that's in the context of Aisha's question. I was listening to the conversation and reflecting. I don't think for talent you should be looking at culture. You should be looking at practice. Culture just tells you, culture is the glass, it's the shape of the water. That's it. We have to, it's the water that you're pouring into it. And secondly, I would like a clear definition now of what we mean when we talk about talent. Because for now, it seems to me our conversation has just been people management. हम people management की बातें करें, talent की तो बात शुरू की नहीं है. So what are we defining talent as?
So I think we could start. Maybe you come up with different definitions.
If I have 10 people in my team, one of them is my talent. मेरा एक स्टार है, मेरे पास 6 से 7 घोड़े हैं, और एक तो वो लोग हैं that should join my competition as soon as possible. That's my definition. So when we talk about talent and say, okay, this is my star, this is my guy. What have you done when you've done that? You've taken your first step. You've already taken the first 2 steps in the talent management cycle. I mean, how many people for HR in the audience? Talent management cycle here. Identification, acquisition, development, etc., etc., etc. Recruitment, induction, training, development, transfers, and so on, so on, so on, so on. So when you say this is my guy, and this is my talent, he's my star, you've already done the first 2 steps of the talent management cycle: acquisition and identification. You didn't use your culture to do that. You use recruitment services, you use management practices. You look to see, is this guy going to do the job? I want him or, forgive me, him or her to do. And the best way to do it. What next? If this person needs to remain in the company long enough for you to actually develop this person to deliver on their promise and their potential, this person then needs to be given the right role to do. We seem to think talent management is training. ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा अगर हम stretch करेंगे अपने आप को, हम mentoring और coaching पे पहुंच जाएंगे. But that's 30% in total of what the talent management cycle is actually supposed to be. How is culture, practices, and technology going to help you there? I would like to defer to my more experienced colleagues or to my more innovative colleagues to help answer this question for me, because I think it's a very fascinating area of talent management.
Learning and learning.
Yeah. So usually, I think 5 years ago, I used to think companies are added learning centers because I was the vendor who used to get money off of that. So they're at a learning center. We go to them, we talk about a lot of stuff. They give us money, we train. That's it. Getting into a company, I realized that it's obviously a lot more complex. But defining talent is still a challenge for all of us. In our case, it's usually not the one guy or 2 guys, but it's different people on which the entire team or function is being run. And that long enough thing, Jalal said that they have to be there long enough for you to develop and really do something with it. That is still a huge challenge with us. I mean, that's challenge there, that's challenge here. I joined the Raj as head of talent management, spent a year and a half, went into brand management, marketing, to really experience what we just launched. From HR to really be in the business and see what's happening to me. It was a scary experiment. So for 13 months, I experienced all the policies that we launched and everything that we did, as HR or whatever we were doing. How was I being affected as an employee? And I came back and I fought. I came back trying to establish a specialized L&D function, and I had a conversation with my manager and I said, what we just did, I think that was very wrong. I think it's safe to say that we spent a year and a half, and I think I learned that in a year and a half, whatever we did, it's not working out because the reality that I have in the business is very different. Is very different from mentoring and coaching, from values even. To be very honest, from even values. Because right now, most of the companies put a lot of fancy words and try to define values. I don't know if that's how they should be. Or I don't know even values should be communicated the way they are communicated. To be very, I'm second guessing all of that. I'm second guessing whatever I learned throughout my life. And I'm happy that I'm second guessing. But the problem is that we're scared of this questioning ourselves. So yes, I'm still struggling to define talent because when I go to the Cokes and the Pepsi and the Unilevers and the P&Gs and talk to their people and they have their words of explaining talent by saying this is core talent, this is emerging talent, this is future talent, and this is how we define these things.
फिर वो 9 square निकलता
फिर
है।
वो 9 square बना,
9 square बनता है।
वो 9 square बनाते हैं, वो McKinsey ने जी बचपन में हाँ या वो 9 को बनाते हैं और यार मुझे नहीं पता, आई एम हैप्पी टू से कि मुझे नहीं पता, बट मैं दो चीजें जरूर जानता हूँ। एक, मेरा गट शायद मुझे कुछ बता देगा जो कि ठीक तरीका नहीं है, बट क्या करूँ, इंस्टिंक्ट पे रिलाई करना पड़ जाता है कि यार हाँ ये ठीक है, इसको उस तरह लेके चलना चाहिए, तो एक्सपेरिमेंट थोड़ी कैसे कर लेते हैं। And the other bit is that we have to develop systems and ecosystems जहाँ पर हम ज़्यादा details ले सकें ये देखने के लिए यार talent को define कैसे करें। I was talking to a guy who is very well known in the industry and I talked about yeah, what do we do? We need to innovate, we need to really think and really define things or align कैसे करें। I think we're not aligned on a lot of things, a lot of definitions. We do have great fancy words, we've read great journals and it's good for talking and whatnot. But we need to, and he gave me a solution. He said, "What, you know, there's metaverse right now, Mentor Studio. You can do virtual training." And I was like, just to challenge you, yes, I can say that if I have a platform that can study my people for 30 minutes or 1 hour, training is the last thing that I want to do. I really want to have their genome mapped on the wall, really see their DNA of how they're operating in multiple situations, and then maybe think that I can begin to define something. Yeah.
Have you looked at the software called Lattice?
We are looking at a couple of software.
Look at Lattice.
Okay.
For talent management. You've seen it?
I saw the ads.
No, really look at that, and look at Kudos.
Okay.
In Pakistan, I think ICI did it. You guys you did it with, who's that company that does Google? Buy one, get one. Vouch 360.
About 360.
You developed a rewards and recognition program with Vouch 360. वो मेरे पास क्या है?
You see, but how is that going very fast? Exactly. This is the problem that we're struggling with.
Yeah, no, but it's such a good thing. And I was actually looking at Kudos. Kudos is a digital platform for rewards and recognition. And one of the things that I liked a lot about Kudos was that there was a lot of flexibility for me as HR to build intrinsic reward points. Points for intrinsic reward, not for extrinsic. Extrinsic reward के भाई ये लो यार 50 रुपए बढ़ा दो ये 5,000 रुपए तुमने बड़ा project पे काम किया, but more intrinsic stuff. And we learned a lot actually from what you had done when they brought the course. Now we're looking at developing our own platform. Kudos does that also. What Lattice does is what you were talking about, which is where it's very invasive if you set it up this way. There are laws governing that kind of invasion abroad, not so in Pakistan. What Lattice does is, it'll take an individual and its artificial intelligence will scour that person's address, their hobbies, their CV, their career history with you, their LinkedIn profile, their TikTok, their Instagram, their Facebook, their कौन सी चीजें like की थी, dislike की थी, live. And we'll constantly be updating that person's psycho and social graphic. And then comparing it with their declared career development plan. That this is my personal development plan, this is my career development plan, this is how I want to grow in the company. And it will be constantly matching. Is this person actually on the right career track in my organization? Is this person really a star? Or do their talents, the things that they are actually inherently good at doing, are they even in the right department? Maybe this person hasn't had a promotion in 10 years, not because his manager say baat nahi banti. He's in the wrong department. Put him in another place, he'll shine. These decisions are invisible to HR because as HR departments, we're so inherently reliant on certain established and formalized modes of input. We believe what the manager says, what the head of the department says, जो performance appraisal में लिखा हुआ है, जो आपके TNA में है. This is actually this is one of the reasons why, and I think what Raz has done is very good and very interesting. They've separated talent management from talent acquisition. You put talent acquisition in HR, that's 90% of your workday gone. Gone. The remaining 70% of HR is bureaucracy. You're pushing papers, file, but maybe if you have 5 minutes, you might actually sit down and think about, hey, have I really managed to fit the right people in the right jobs and given them the right pay and incentives and intrinsic and extrinsic reward structures to motivate them and grow them and keep them in the company, which is HR's real job actually, which is what we're actually getting paid by our companies to do. And we don't really do that. But when you actually start looking at it from that perspective, and why I would recommend you start looking at technology, and I thought today's conversation about technology start looking at softwares like this. Because the talent management process is not rocket science, we're doing it. What this does is it formalizes it. It puts it there for you, and it allows employees in a very, yes, it is invasive. But let's also now look at the law in the country, the HR law in the country, by regulators, by the State Bank of Pakistan, and now by the SECP. If you're entering the financial sector at least, I need to have a police report, I need to check you on Verisis, I need to know that whether or not you're a loan defaulter, whether or not you're a money launderer, I need to know at least what you did in your previous job before I can hire you. Oh, degree bhi verify you here. Before I don't have these 6 things, I can't confirm you, I can't give you an offer, or etc.
I am very afraid the thought process. Very.
Sorry.
I'm very afraid of the thought process.
Ah.
I'm afraid of living by some formula which is embedded in the computer to determine what should I do. From a very, very technical level, some programs will tell me how to work. I would rather be more aligned. They are getting insight from data. They might be driving my choices to some extent. Amazon does.
Like Cambridge Network.
So what you are saying is you are going into exactly what Gen Z is against. Getting into areas you want to understand people's DNA. I would be very, very afraid of it. I would be very afraid to give my data to a latest tool. And it is going to give and guess it based on an algorithm that what I like, what my career should look like. Tomorrow you are going to suggest to me, your wife should be like this because
I'm taking a very simplistic view of what I was saying. Nowhere in anything that I say that this is just decision. No. I'm talking about decision support factors. Ultimately, the decision has to be made from the data.
Whatever my understanding of my data.
I think that's like two angles of it.
Yes,
Yeah.
I agree. I kept one. So, I would not like to work for a company which is as invasive as this.
But my argument is we already are.
Hold back.
Sorry.
My
That's what sincere.
algorithm is telling me.
My sincere.
I'm sorry.
My sincere.
Please accept it. So I'm afraid of it. And if you're going to manage talent based on some algorithm, so then you're taking humanity out. Coming back to Satyan's value proposition, people have made it very, very complicated. So I'm a student of how technology for my matrix life is technology. That's when I started out when I was in US, internet revolution and all technology revolution started. So to observe these people for a very, very long time. They have structures. They believe in structures. They work with structures, and they have independence. So there is a duality between.
Five mix between.
So there is a duality of a structure and there is a duality of power. We vary for his company, my company, and their company. And we have to find that place. Invasiveness is not part. Privacy, priviness is not part. I would not allow anybody to have that level of. And one last thing, simplify the message to just 3 messages. Whatever you want to get, 3 messages, repeat it, and repeat. It will get you today, it will get you this.
Last week, so you can
Okay, 3 messages there.
3 messages.
Just 3 messages. And just, if you go and study, or just at KSBL and teach a course over there, so I put people into chapters. पूरे 20 सालों में 4 initiatives. Simplistically said, number 1, number 2, sell, close. Number 1. Do structure, there's 4 messages, 20 years later. Took the company from 25 billion to 160 billion. Steve Jobs, simplicity. And they came back, made a great. इसको निकाल दो, ये product निकाल दो, 4 product.
They had a core thing to focus on.
So, I mean, it is the focus and its communication. Simplify the communication into your organizations. To simplify it, I think so we get real work.
And I think with that, I would also like to ask for next question. How do we simplify the communication and how do we change the organizational design? Because the idea is that if you have technology at the base of everything that a company does, and when I say at the base, maybe we need to start thinking our way out of departments like we have a separate department for procurement, we have a separate department for HR. Maybe there's another way of organizing or organizations. Maybe we can have technology at the base, and then we can have processes, and then we can have talent. And that's the concept of bionic company, which is being advocated for the digital age. So a bit on how we need to shift our design, and a bit on previous conversations by Mr. Khan.
Thanks, sir. Very right, exactly. But 2 चीजों का context थोड़ा सा मैं set कर रहा था, जिसमें चला दिया था. One was me sharing an incident on I was having a conversation with a consultant. और मैंने देखा मैं जानना जरूर चाहता हूँ कि मेरे employee का DNA क्या है, as in EQ 2.0, coaching के अंदर, इन सारी चीजों के अंदर हमें ये जानना चाहिए कि हमारा emotional intelligence में मैं कहाँ land कर रहा हूँ कैसे. So that's what I meant. That's number 1. Number 2, even what he answered, I think उन्होंने भी ये बात ही बताई कि यार understanding कैसे हो सकती है, with the caveat that is our choice. So what we I think आपकी बात से मुकम्मल agree कर रहा हूँ. Yes. But with the caveat कि यार it's up to us और ये सारी चीजें share होंगी उन लोगों के साथ. They get to see, yeah, this is how you did in a test, in a pressure test situation. This is how you did. We are not hiding it. This is yours. आप बताएं कैसे काम करें.
Like all these apps that take consent from us, they have the information.
डेटा तो शुरू हो, तो बात तो शुरू हो कि मैं एक्चुअली हूँ क्या. मैं इस वक्त एक प्रेशर सिचुएशन में हाउ डू आई एक्ट, और मैं वहां से बिल्ड करना शुरू करूँगा. अच्छा मैं अगर ऐसे एक्ट कर रहा हूँ तो मुझे किन चीजों को क्या करना है. दैट्स जस्ट क्लैरिफाइंग द इंटेंट, आई थिंक. दैट्स नंबर 1. तो वो इसलिए वो क्लैरिफाई कर दिया. दूसरा 3 मैसेजेस कंप्लीटली एग्री. बचपन से आते हैं ये चीज है. ये 3 मैसेजेस, सिंपल मैसेजेस, उन्हीं को रिट्रीट करना चाहता हूं. बिल्कुल आई कंप्लीटली एग्री विद यू. Organizational design, I think that is the most dynamic thing that we've seen in our company as well. That even Qasim started a function, then the function grew, then the function changed shape. So वो मुसलसल with the way we growing, the way our priorities are shifting, ऑर्गेनाइजेशनल डिजाइन में वो बहुत ज्यादा डायनामिक रहता है, लेकिन अगर उसमें नजर ना रखी जाए तो कुछ ट्रेडिशनल देखा है हमने, वो जो ट्रायंगल बना होता है लीडर्स इंडिविजुअल कंट्रीब्यूटर्स, वो रोम्बस बन जाएगा, वो फ्लैट हायरार्की की जो हम बातें कर रहे हैं, अगर कॉन्स्टेंटली मॉनिटर ना किया जाए तो वो हिलता जुलता जाता है। तो वी आल्सो नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड कि किस चैलेंज और किस प्रायोरिटी के लिए हमें क्या करना है। वर्किंग इन अ कंपनी विद अ कंप्लीटली मैट्रिक्स ऑर्गेनाइजेशन जहां पे मुसलसल डिजाइन चेंज हो रहा है, आगे पीछे हो रहा है, इवन रिपोर्टिंग लाइंस, एंड इट्स ओके टू हैव a little bit of conflict with local, regional, and then regional and global towards local, and it's okay. It's human. It's okay. I was talking to a colleague in Germany. He was saying the same thing. Like, yeah, there are a lot of conflicts nowadays. And whenever there are two people in the room, there will be conflict. It's okay. Whenever people are resisting change, even that is natural. It's okay. It's human. So, organizational design, I think. ये एक ऐसी डायनामिक चीज है जो डिपेंड करता है इस बात पे कि आपकी बिजनेस प्रायोरिटीज क्या हैं
And the context.
and the context of that.
Arshad pointed out where chemicals are there, or let's say the airline industry where they need to be very strict on the protocol. You can't afford flexibility.
That being said, एक और बात जो मुसलसल हो रही है with regards to values. So I do agree. Erd Keller says कि मुझसे सबसे मेरी competitive edge जो है वो मेरा culture है. 45 सालों से कोविड के दौरान कंपनी को प्रॉफिटेबली गिरा रहे हैं लाइन में। बहुत सारे लोग ये बात कर रहे होते हैं, बट मुझे लगता है ये ऑर्गेनाइजेशनल डिजाइन और जो भी हम बात करें, दैट्स मोर टेक एंड मोर प्रॉब्लम सॉल्विंग रादर द व्हाई ऑफ। आई थिंक अगेन जस्ट पर्सपेक्टिव कि वो एक थोड़ी सेपरेट बात जरूर है, बिल्कुल है, और वो बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है, जरूरी हिस्सा है, इट्स अ फैब्रिक ऑफ द ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, बट दिस इज मोर टुवर्ड्स हाउ आर वी सॉल्विंग डिफरेंट प्रॉब्लम्स in the face of different challenges, which are, to be very honest, unprecedented challenges. No one has the answer to those challenges. और अगर हैं भी तो वो उनके कल्चर या उनके कॉन्टेक्स्ट में होंगे, हमारे पास शायद वो चीजें बिल्कुल उस तरह ना रेप्लिकेट हो सकें।
I think a way to summarize this would be that there is no longer a playbook that we thought that we had of managing and leading our organizations, manage our talent. I think we have to again take the role of alchemists. We take a few things from here, and then we see what works according to the context of our organization, its history. Again, history plays an important role. This country has a history, and we see the effects coming over the years. Other countries have different histories. Same goes for organizations as well. अगर किसी भी जगह की 50 साल की हिस्ट्री है, it's a certain way of doing things. Doing a complete makeover is not going to be that easy as compared to a company which is like recently formed. You still have an opportunity to just like set the tone right at the very beginning. Any comments from anyone?
Okay, whatever discussion we have been having, at times it is giving a feel as if कोई कल सुबह उठे दुनिया बिल्कुल बदल गई और there was a world before technology and there's a world after technology. ऐसा नहीं है। The human race has been seeing these changes, चाहे आप उसको technology बोले, चाहे आप किसी भी form, that those changes, this race has been seeing and adapting to it and adopting to whatever changes is required, and it is the same adaptability which has brought us to this level. टेक्नोलॉजी भी इन इंसानों ने की है ना, तो ऐसा नहीं है कि अब हर चीज जो पहले हो रही थी टेक्नोलॉजी आ गई है तो जनाब कल से जो पहले आप कर रहे थे सब गलत हो गए, एंड वी हैव टू अडैप्ट टू कंप्लीटली न्यू वे ऑफ वर्किंग। मैं आपको एग्जांपल देता हूँ। आई आल्सो आई बीन कंडक्टिंग इंटरव्यूज एंड नेचुरली इन कॉर्पोरेट वर्ल्ड वी ऑलवेज फोकस ऑन बिहेवियरल। किसी चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट का इंटरव्यू कर रहे हो तो आप उससे अकाउंटिंग के सवाल नहीं पूछते, आप उससे बिहेवियरल इंटरव्यू भी लेते हैं, एंड जस्ट टू सी वेदर दिस पर्सन विल बी अ कल्चरल फिट फॉर योर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन और नॉट। इवन टुडे whether you call them millennials or Gen Z or whatever, आज एक बच्चा आप इंटरव्यू कर रहे होगे जो कि स्ट्रगल करता हुआ, जिसको अपनी यूनिवर्सिटी की फी पे करने के लिए ट्यूशन पढ़ा के वो फीस पे की होगी, उसका behavioral aspect या उसकी way of thinking would be completely different from a person who was born with a golden spoon in his mouth or her mouth. What different was that? And as far as the organizations are concerned, it's always best to have diversity and a blend of all kind of. जब भी diversity की हम बात करते हैं, it always goes into the gender diversity basket. But diversity is much beyond gender diversity. उसमें cultural क्या होती है, एज डाइवर्सिटी होती है, उसमें बैकग्राउंड किस इकोनॉमिक बैकग्राउंड से सैलरी ग्रुप से लोग आ रहे हैं, ये सारी डाइवर्सिटी होती है. इट्स ऑलवेज गुड फॉर एन ऑर्गेनाइजेशन. देन एन ऑर्गेनाइजेशन इज एक्सपोज्ड टू सो मच ऑफ डाइवर्सिटी दैट इसका एक्सपोजर जब बढ़ता है तो टॉलरेंस लेवल भी बढ़ता है. That is why gender diversity is important, because the organization should know how to deal with either male or female employees and create an equality. Whatever the cultural issues are, the organization should try to learn and basically spread that policy across. So from my perspective, I think we are taking too much of extreme positions. यार ये हो गया तो मतलब आपने अब तक जो करते रहे और टैलेंट मैनेजमेंट होते ही टैलेंट इस मुल्क में पिछले 75 साल से कोई ना कोई तो मैनेज कर रहा है. There have been a lot of organizations who have been very successful in this country. और आज भी जो नए स्टार्टअप जो सक्सेसफुल हो रहे हैं, वो टैलेंट अचानक से तो कोई ट्रेन टैलेंट तो बाहर से नहीं आ गया, यही का टैलेंट है जो कर रहे हैं. अब हम ये कहेंगे यार हर चीज के देखिए जितना भी टेक्नोलॉजी आ जाए, we will not be able to do away with human interaction. We will have to keep subjectivity in place. That is why the organization should go for 360-degree thing. It's all about subjectivity. So robots यहाँ पे नहीं है. Every person will come from a different background. He will have, जिस तरह से सारे हमारे fingerprints different होते हैं. Every person has a different personality. And organizations should be ready to deal with that diversity. तो आप जितनी इसको ऑब्जेक्टिविटी की तरफ लेके जाना भी चाहेंगे, इट विल बी काउंटर प्रोडक्टिव. सब्जेक्टिविटी विल हैव टू टेक इट्स रोल. आपको कोई फेसबुक पे जाके लोगों के एम्प्लॉय ये भी सोचे कि मैं इस चीज को लाइक करूं या ना लाइक करूं क्योंकि मैं इट कैन हैव एन इम्पैक्ट ऑन माय करियर. आई मीन दिस इज नॉट द वर्ल्ड वी वुड लाइक टू हैव. You get enough time during your on-the-job thing to get, if the organization is well organized, if it has good set of management putting across, it gets enough time to understand the behavioral aspect of an employee. और अगर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन जो बंदा 8 घंटे 10 घंटे 12 घंटे ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में लगा रहा है, if an organization is unable to gauge what kind of a person, how does he behave under pressure, how does he behave under certain circumstances, then there's a serious problem with that organization. An employee should actually see whether they should be sticking to that organization or not. तो मेरे हिसाब से तो चीजें जैसे चल रही हैं, things will evolve. और इसी तरह से organizations will grow and organizations will learn, and whether it's talent management, whether it's recruitment, everything will take its toll. आज हम organizations में बात कर रहे हैं 50%, 60% of the employees will be millennials or are millennials. So when a CEO of an organization will be a millennial, I mean automatically that change is going to come in. So we should not think कि आज अगर कुछ नहीं किया तो कल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन खत्म हो जाएंगे, ऐसा कुछ नहीं किया. And for the younger generation, I think it's extremely important for them to also understand what will be expected out of them as well. They'll still be working for organization. Startups will have different expectations. The companies which have been there for the last 70, 80 odd years, they will have different expectations. So it's important for the employees to understand what kind of expectations will be ask from them as well.
Sorry. I mean, part of study which I'm doing for this teaching, I was looking at G, how it is morphing. G, to them, like, how is it morphed over years? So, I mean, that's very documented. So G, up to the next morphing edge is something which is interesting for people who are living in the brick and mortar world to see. So they're splitting up, they have just shed all the companies which are not core to them. They're just focusing on three businesses: aviation, second is power, power plus digital, and the third one they have is healthcare. What they have done is the base of all those business is heavy data intensive data acquisition. So that's the common thread is data and technology at the bottom. They split into three different companies, made them much more leaner, and there is no big headquarter anymore. And it would be interesting to understand how to conglomerate would morph into something of a unit and a network. So networking is probably one of the keys to enable organizations. So that is something very interesting. I thought I would say.
One of the things जो आपने बात की कि बिल्कुल उठे और चेंज नहीं हुआ, बिल्कुल ऐसा ही है. Things are evolved. आज की जनरेशन है, उसके पास choices आते हैं. आज की जनरेशन के पास स्पीड बहुत है, ठीक है ना. सुबह उठती हर चीज की स्पीड चाहिए उसको. So वो जब ऑर्गेनाइजेशन भी सिलेक्ट कर रहा होता है अपने करियर के लिए, तो वहाँ पे उसको स्पीड चाहिए. And that's where पहले मतलब ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में टिपिकल लार्ज ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में जहाँ पे ज़्यादा resources है, workforce है, there's a certain hierarchy, एक time लगता है ऊपर जाने में, position acquire करने में and all that. The reason why there are certain group of people who prefer working for startups is because of the speed that we offer. It's because of the leanness that we offer. It's because of the title they can have in next 2 years. It's because of the ESOPs that we can offer them, right? And that's what drives them, which we can never match, which ICI can never match, which Berger cannot match, whatever, all these brands. And because we offer that speed, and not every resource is after that. Not every person who graduates out of the university is looking for that, and we are also not looking for them actually. So we are very selective, and they're also selective, and that's what is a great match. So आपकी बात बिल्कुल सही है. 80-90% of the world will work the way you. That's how it has evolved, right? But we are disruptive. We are not looking at the way things have evolved. We are saying, okay, वो यहाँ तक पहुँच गई, लेकिन आप इसको reverse करके देखते हैं, complete reverse करके देखते हैं. So I completely agree with your opinion, but हमारा देखने का तरीका ही कुछ बखरा है.
That's absolutely spot on. Exactly, but what I meant was that there will always be diversity in thought process, even in Gen Z or millennials also. There will always be millennials coming, depending on what kind of a background they have come in. Somebody would still favor stability. Some people will want fast move, ESOP मिलता है, देखी जाएगी 2 साल बाद होता है, फिर भी हो जाता है startup को देख के यार ये है. But some people will not. So the course will take its own track, and every employee and all the population which is coming in, वो अपने areas of comfort देख के ना वो slots में आते हैं.
You would not want a doctor like
Exactly.
that. A surgeon.
Whether you're a startup or a more established organization, we're all at various stages. An organization's journey is one of institutionalization. It's one of standardization, institutionalization, something works, you repeat it, we call them processes and practices, but that's really what this is. You're hard-coding things that have worked in the past, and then reflecting them in your organization, which is great in theory. Practically speaking, क्या होता है? Goes right back to what you said. And coming back to your original question of organizational design, we don't design the business. which is what we should be doing. We should be designing the business. And that's the advantage you guys have. You guys, it's not too late for you. You can still design the business. What we do is we design functions, we design practices, that's what we encode, and that contributes to, it has its own strengths. I'm not going to say that. It does not have strengths. It has a lot of strengths. Especially when you're dealing with larger and larger and larger numbers and a broader and broader and broader scale of business. Absolutely. In fact, one of the things I was discussing with Asha before we started was the very interesting structure that ICI in Pakistan has. And if you are students of HR and you really like organizational design, I'm a bit of an organizational design nerd. I like looking at these things, so I highly recommend you look at how ICI is doing it. How do you manage people in that? Let's remember one thing. No talent management is also talent management. It's very Darwinian. It's survival of the fittest. The cream will rise to the top. Maybe that works for you guys. Maybe that will work in your context. But when you get older, you will have to take a decision. The decision that we now have to take for ourselves when we look at our star people. Do we lean towards agility and flexibility? Or do we lean towards standardization and institutionalization? Both are advantageous. Both have their advantages. Agility, flexibility में हम employee को कहेंगे कि यार तुम्हारा career manage करना हमारा काम नहीं है, वो तुम्हारा काम है, तेरा career है, you go manage it. We will facilitate. In older systems, and this is a more modern approach towards talent management in HR. The suite of technologies, practices, cultures you need to manage that approach for talent and careers, very different. Traditional approach, we are the company, this is my competency framework, the board this is my values and culture, board has signed off on this, you ne kaha ye karna hai. It's very normative. You must conform to me as an entity now, because you have this business card and we are an exclusive club, and you must abide by my rules, otherwise no salary promotion may be. That also has advantages. I'm not saying it's a wrong way of going about it. That is a decision every entity has to take for itself. You must decide between the two. Based upon the decision you take, your practices, your approaches, the suite of technologies, your approaches towards how you identify what is talent for you, what technologies you use to help slot people, identify them, put them on good career tracks, give them the right job assignments, tell them they're hypos for God's sakes, and then pay them more and reward them when they succeed, and then punish them when they don't. That's important. You have to do that because other people need to see that it is difficult being talent. Otherwise, they will not aspire towards becoming talent. Again, I would point out what my colleague here did in his interviews. His entire interview is a culture fit, what he called it. But it wasn't really culture, it's just practice. It's how that person's actually going to be working on ground once they set foot in the organization. And I think that's the right way of going about it. But when you look at it in terms of scale, and especially when you've got, it's easy to do talent management for what, 40 people, 500 people? I got 10,000 people.
15,000 people.
15,000 people. How do you do talent management there? The notion that the line manager or the head of the department is a reliable source of employee qualification for the next level is flawed in my view. After having done HR for almost 20 years, and I think my colleagues in HR departments and my colleagues in HR here will tell you, what is the state of your performance review? I heard you all laughing. That answers the question. So then you're left with this dilemma. You have people that are talented. You talk to the head of the department, all my ugly ducklings are swans. All my ugly ducklings are swans. At the time of the performance review, the salary increment, yet, for organizational longevity, for organizational success, it is essential that an entity identify those high performers are. Really, the people who are actually doing work, the people who are seeped not just in the culture and value, but in the practices of your entity, who are really adding value. and then promoting them to the forefront. For that, first things first for me, in my view, is data, it's information. Somebody has to tell you. After that, I defer to the experience of my seniors here, it becomes art.
Thank you, Jalal. Now we're moving on to the last question for this panel. We would take 2 Q&As from the audience. So whoever is planning to ask a question in this, please raise your hand. Very rightly pointed out, performance management. Actually, that was going to be my last question. Before I move on to that, I would just like to share a study that Deloitte did recently to rethink its performance management cycle. They discovered that they were spending around a lot of hours, close to like 2 million, for 65,000 people running the performance management cycle. And they realized that what if we decide to reallocate all of this time elsewhere? Because anyone who's been through the performance management cycle knows that towards the end, the ratings and getting people to agree on the ratings, and then you have those tons and tons of meetings which revolve around that. So they came up with this idea of a performance snapshot in which the person's performance is actually more aligned to their actual performance rather than what the line manager thinks of the person, which is, I think, a more objective way of looking at it. So they did this entire study, came up with a framework, they've been trying and it's been working well. Which brings me to my last question for this panel, which is that we all know that performance management is one of the levers that leaders can use to shape the context of the organization. And when I say context, I mean culture and the way they do things about there. So, how can leaders actually, in practice, given the local context, and I'm talking in terms of or local organizations, whether startups or corporates, how can we shape the context differently and user levels differently? So,
I think important is to feedback consistently dena. I think that's for me. I think that's the most important thing. If I'm going into a conversation with my boss about my appraisal and I'm surprised, then that means me and him did not communicate or हमने इतनी बात नहीं की कि उसकी expectation मुझे पता हो. अगर मैं किसी का appraisal I'm on the other side और मैं कर रहा हूँ और मैं उधर जाके उसको बता रहा हूँ कि यार ये 10 weaknesses थी, तुमने ये नहीं किया, ये नहीं किया, ये नहीं किया, और मैं अगर उस दिन बता रहा हूँ तो I'm the one who's at fault. I'm not the good person because me as a leader needs to tell them this, right? So I think the word be expectation and communication. सही performance cycle साल में एक बार होता है या whatever, but आपका regular feedback, an honest feedback to the employee. ये वाला नहीं कि यार catch up किया उसी वक्त सोचा दिमाग लगाने, अगर आप 5-10 मिनट लगाएंगे, and again if you can't spend 15 minutes with your direct report, he's maybe once every 2 weeks, but couple कुछ exceptions are, then there's something wrong that you're doing, right? मेरे हिसाब से आपको 15 मिनट टाइम निकाल के उनके साथ बैठ के काम के अलावा भी बात उनकी personal चीजों के बारे में, not personal, but I mean just getting to know them, कि भाई what's happening, because अगर वो आप expectation और वो सारी चीजें साल में एक बार करेंगे तो then वो जो gap होता है ना, मेरे हिसाब से and I've been on both sides, so I was working somewhere जहाँ पे I didn't get a chance to communicate too much with my boss, and the expectations were 6 months down the line मैं एक और direction में काम कर रहा हूँ और वो expectation got me, but जब मैंने over communication भी की तो I felt कि हाँ यार it's so that's my opinion.
मैं इस टॉपिक पे एक्चुअली एक भी बोलना चाह रहा था, बट ठीक है. यार परफॉर्मेंस मैनेजमेंट इज अ वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग वर्ड. तुमने कैसा हिसाब किताब काम किया पूरे साल में उसको मैनेज करना है. मुझे थोड़ी स्टेटमेंट में ओवर कॉन्फिडेंस और डर लगता है जिससे, बट एक डेटा के बारे में बात हो रही थी तो मैं उसको सादा ज़बान में समझाया था. मेरे अब्बा जो है वो डायरी लिखा करते थे, 15 दिन अगर वो डायरी लिखे और बार बार कह रहे हैं कि मैं रात में एक कश सिगरेट का लगा के सोया तो सर आपको सिगरेट पीने की आदत पड़ गई है. उस वक्त वो डेटा उस तरह कलेक्ट होता था, अब वो डेटा कलेक्ट करने के तरीके फर्क हैं. हम वी आर मूविंग टुवर्ड्स अ प्लेस जहां पर अब वो साल में एक दफा बैठ के गुफ्तगू होना है और उसी वक्त इंफॉर्मेशन का डिस्ट्रीब्यूट होना बड़ा मुश्किल और अजीब सा काम है। व्हेन वी केम इनटू द राज 3 years ago, तो एक एक्सेल शीट थी जिस पर ये हिसाब लगता था कि तुम्हें कितना मिलेगा। फ्रॉम दैट 3 years तो अभी भी बहुत बाकी और 3 years अब तक एटलीस्ट यहाँ तक पहुंच गए कि कॉन्वर्सेशंस होती हैं। देयर इज अ थिंग कॉल्ड परफॉर्मेंस कॉन्वर्सेशन। ट्रस्ट मी, जब पहली दफा मैं बचा तो हमें समझ ही नहीं आई कि वेयर डू वी स्टार्ट, क्योंकि माइनस से पहले जीरो पे तो आते हैं। तो वो देयर वाज अ लॉट ऑफ माइंडसेट शिफ्ट दैट वाज सपोज्ड टू हैपन। और ये मिसाल मैं इसलिए दे रहा हूँ क्योंकि अभी परसों आए वी वर इन दुबई, वहां पर मैं क्रॉस करने लगा रोड, गलती से ज़ेब्रा क्रॉसिंग के सामने ही खड़ा था, क्रॉस करने लगा तो गाड़ी खुद ही रुक गई और मैं एकदम परेशान हो गया, मुझसे कुछ गलत हो गया। मैं पीछे हुआ ड्राइवर ने कहा क्या हो गया, आगे चले, वो भी खुद बोलता गाड़ी आ रही है, किसी को खुद रुकेगा, उसको लाइसेंस मिलने की इजाजत ही नहीं है, उसको ये तमीज नहीं है। ये मेरे लिए पैराडॉक्स शिफ्ट है, मैं पहली दफा गया हूं। यहाँ पर ऐसा नहीं है, अभी आप अपनी गाड़ी में पार्किंग पे जाएंगे आपको खुद अंदाजा होगा। सो बेसिकली जो यहाँ पर मैं बात कहना चाह रहा हूँ कि वहाँ माइंडसेट शिफ्ट है और यहाँ पर ये 3 साल में माइंडसेट शिफ्ट करना कि परफॉर्मेंस कॉन्वर्सेशन का होना बहुत जरूरी है। इस बात से कहीं ज्यादा कि तुमने उसके लिए ताली बजाई, मैं ये जानना चाहता हूँ, या मेरे लिए ताली बजी, मैं ये जानना चाहता हूँ कि हाउ एम आई डूइंग, हाउ एम आई डूइंग। मेरी कैंडी क्रश में कितनी मूव्स चल रही हैं और कितनी मूव्स बाकी हैं और कितनी दफा मैंने जबरदस्त लाइफ लाइन यूज की। आई वांट टू नो दैट। अब इसको मैं इनसिक्योरिटी कह लूं, इसको मैं कह लूं कि मैं सिर्फ फीडबैक पे चलता हूं, इसको मैं ये कह लूं कि यार अगला बताएगा तो मैं चलूंगा, या मेरी जात का रिमोट कंट्रोल उसके हाथ में। दैट इज एब्सोल्यूट स्टेटमेंट्स है बहुत सारी जो जजमेंट का जिसके अंदर आंसर है। मुझे बस ये जानना है हाउ जो मैंने किया ये ठीक था मेरे हिसाब से या किसी और के हिसाब से, और जरूरी नहीं कि जो वो कह रहे हो मैं मानूंगी। आई हैव दैट मच सब्सटेंस टू नो कि हाँ यार आई डोंट एग्री विद दिस, बट आई वांट टू नो कि ये मैंने जो बॉल थ्रो की इसकी स्पीड क्या थी, एक बेसिक आई वांट टू नो। तो परफॉर्मेंस मैनेजमेंट से पहले मैं कहूंगा इट्स अबाउट कॉन्वर्सेशंस, जो कि इन्होंने भी कहा, इट्स जस्ट हैविंग दोस कॉन्वर्सेशंस, चाहे वो लोगों को जानने के लिए हो। और मुझे लगता है कि जो लोगों को जानने के लिए कॉन्वर्सेशन होती है उसके अंदर लोग ये भूल जाते हैं कि उनकी परफॉर्मेंस और केपीआईज क्या है, और लोग बस काम करते हैं काम करने के लिए, बिकॉज देयर इज अ मोर फील टू इट। बिकॉज अब मैं ऑर्गेनाइजेशन या केपीआई के लिए नहीं कर रहा, आई जस्ट वांट टू फील द वे आई एम फीलिंग राइट नाउ, और मैं उस बंदे के लिए उसके साथ ये काम कर रहा हूँ, इट डजंट मैटर कि टाइम क्या हो। So it's that softer element. I know कि हम hardcore चीजों के बारे में बात करते हैं, but it is that soft element जो कि मेरी feel change करेगा। Number 1, Number 2, हम एक ऐसी इंडस्ट्री से ताल्लुक रखते हैं जहाँ पर हमारे पास कोई नियमत नहीं है, और मैं क्लियरली कहूँगा we are not that blessed, जहाँ पे चाहे हमारे पास टाइम हो या ना हो, हमारे लोग कहते हैं हमारे पास टाइम है कॉन्वर्सेशंस का। तो जिस दिन पहली दफा 30% कॉन्वर्सेशन हो गई परफॉर्मेंस की दराज के अंदर, HR was celebrating. We were celebrating because अभी thank you Jalal for saying this, because for change management सही, because हमें ये अंदाजा हो गया कि है आसान, बस थोड़ा सा लगे रहने की जरूरत है आसान। It's not complicated, it is difficult, it's not complicated. Difficult जरूर है, complicated है। So I think performance management भी मैं कहूँगा it's about those conversations, ये सब खुद ही हो जाता है। That's I don't know if I answered your question, but I think मुझे लगता है ये चीज हम लोगों ने आप लोगों से सीखी, and I'm proud of it. I learned it from the ICL and EFUs and all these companies कि यार मुझे नहीं पता वहाँ हो रही थी कि नहीं हो रही थी, and egg मुझे नहीं पता कि वहाँ हो रही थी या नहीं हो रही थी, but you were over communicating a lot. We want to do the same, and we make sure that our HR people are empowered enough to really sit close and sometimes enforce, sometimes push, sometimes nudge, but let's just have those conversations over a coffee, over a smoke, or wherever, just have those.
मैं एक बात ऐड करना चाहूँगी। So in experience, what I've seen is कि जब आप, and it's not true for everybody, it's not a generalization. कभी कभार ये भी होता है कि in the name of these performance conversations, there is a directive conversation which is happening, which is like a one-way street. So हर किस्म के लोग exist करते हैं. There are people who are more open to actually having a two-way conversation rather than saying oh my way is the right way or the highway kind of a thing. So when we talk about performance conversations, I think it's very important to have those sort of conversations which are genuinely two-way conversations in which both parties actively make an effort to listen and genuinely listen to each other and then sort of reach a mutual consensus rather than having a one-way direct conversation. So anything else?
Sure. First of all, Aisha gave some statistics, Deloitte study where some million hours. I come from a school of thought, spending time on employees' performance management and employees' career planning. No matter how many hours you spend, there's still less. When we say, although we always say that employees are the most valuable asset for an organization, we have been repeating it so much that it has been cliche. But when it comes to spending time on them, I think that we start counting hours. That should not be the case. As far as I'm concerned, I've been fortunate enough to work for organizations where the performance management system had been very strong. I was 10 years with Engro, 7 years with ICI. I mean, the concept of 70% of the employees of the workforce not having any conversation or not going through a formal performance management metrics. I mean, that is, I'm completely surprised. And one of the areas that I've come here to actually seriously learn as to how you guys plan to work on this, because we all know it's a very important thing. And when it comes to performance management, it's not only performance management, because employees also want to know as to where their career is going. And as you mentioned, that when an employee is surprised with his or her rating, then it's actually the supervisor's fault that he or she has not been doing what he or she is supposed to do. So as far as the system goes, the system was there in Negro and also in ICI. The employee, whenever he is communicated rating, he has to accept it, and he also has or she also has the right to go for appeal against it. And then the appeal goes one level higher. And when the appeal goes in, I mean, it also goes against the supervisor, because I mean, why is this such a big surprise? Then when it goes to detailed investigations, then the supervisor also has to come up with formal communications, whether they're verbal or through emails and everything. So it actually binds the whole system to be very strong. So from that perspective, I think technology has definitely played a role in terms of collecting data and everything, and in terms of retrieving data at some point in time, even if you have to bring in the historical record. I think technology can still play a much higher role in this area, but it can never be replaced. There can be a forced ranking system. I mean, there are studies that say forced ranking system is counterproductive. There are studies that there's no system better than this. And different things that work differently for each organization. So it's upon the organization to find the best mix and combination and go for it. But the main thing is that it is the right of an employee to know how is he or she doing in an organization, where should he or she see the career path taking them 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, what areas that he or she needs to work upon. I think this is very important, and this also helps in terms of building again culture of the organization and giving a comfort to the employee, because at the end of the day, it's how much engaged or how much trust an employee has over this organization.
Asset 110 to 110%. Sorry? 110% again. my mind, the issue is not having conversation or a dialogue and waiting for that decency effect to taint the conversation. So it is not about ranking करें, कर बनाए, ना बनाए. You can keep on debating. I just anchor all my discussion on HR. It paper a fair process. It's an HPS paper. It's not going to be several work on that. And that concept from HR, from legal came to HR. Simply said this one line. People who are affected by some outcome, if they have a trust in a process, they may or may not like the outcome, but they will trust us. And that process, if you have that process of performance appraisal, चाहे वो पर्चे पे है, चाहे 10 सौ पे है, चाहे 1 पर्चे पे है, चाहे वो गूगल पे है कहीं पर, it won't matter. Trust, end of the day, will dictate, is it in the system, people believe it, will be part of culture. That's
Thank you very much. I think that's the gist of it all. Leading by fair process. If actually one goes down to study fair process, there's a lot to it. But a simple barometer is that if people in your organization feel that you're being assessed fairly, you have your performance management or whatever you want to call it done right. And if they feel that somewhere along the line they're not being assessed fairly, then something needs to be tweaked around and probably done differently. So with that, I would like to move towards just Q&A from our audience. So we can take 2 questions. So anyone? Okay. So the lady at the back, she raised her hand first. Anyone?
Hi everyone, this is Navina. I'm currently working with Guest Pharma as a senior manager talent and business partner. I have started my professional career more than 10 years ago with multiple organizations like UNICEF, Srila Group, Forge Pakistan, Nestle Pakistan, Telenor, and now Guest Pharma. So my main question towards technology and talent is, I personally believe that tech or no tech, it's the human interaction that matters the most, right? So with introduction of technology, I think we've been talking about the pros and cons, right? So I think few of the cons of technology is it has got a lot to do with work-life integration. I don't call it work-life balance, I call it work-life integration. And secondly, it has got a lot to do with the mental wellness as well. So with the companies, with the tech-savvy companies, do you think it's okay to think about it or leave it like this? Because we say that in technological companies or in software-based companies, usually the average age of an employee is 1 to 2 years. Thank you. I'm sorry, I don't mind.
So we started this initiative called Revitalize. 10 years ago, an empty initiative at that time. It was just a lot of narrative building for people to really creating awareness with regards to mental well-being and whatnot. Even at that time, we did not know how to, and I'm honest over it, we did not know how to really implement this and take this forward. This year, we're actually partnering with a lot of, again, this might sound very shallow, being honest here, with a lot of gyms, with a lot of psychiatrists, with a lot of other places to make sure that we talk enough about well-being and we make sure that now we try to attach it, we're trying to do 2 things this year when it comes to performance. One is objective and key results, the different kind of way of gauging performance, and this, trying to include mental well-being into our performance framework as well. Because yes, this is a huge problem. Burnout is a huge problem. It's not just ours. You go to the BCGs, you go to the Deloitte and whatnot, and one fine day, most of the people just quit right away because of the stress and the pressure and whatnot. So that's we're trying to build a narrative around it. We're making sure that people we're pushing people to do it. Where have we reached? That is still a question for us. Honestly.
Wellness at Dear Life as a program is around 3 years old now. And one of the and we didn't go so far as to push it into PMS, but we did something, and we are continuing to do something exactly what you're doing, partnering with various gyms. We partnered with various, we didn't go to psychologists or psychiatrists. We went to behavioral and talk therapy counselors. And we built panels around them. We actually put budgets behind this and everything. One of the lessons that we learned is, and I don't know what's your update look like, because mine was very low. And when was it low? It was low. Yeah, and here's what we discovered. As a society,
Yes.
we don't talk about mental health as an essential component of health.
It's a cultural
So where our intervention should have been at this level, we were designing interventions at this level. So now one of the things that we need to do is actually take a step back and go back to our employees. And this is where not just HR's messaging, but top down the messaging and the practices and the processes and institutions that we built, where it's saying, look, it's okay to be tired. It's okay to want to have these things, and the organization is there to support you. But then there is a lot of support building that you then need to do at a senior management level as well. To say, okay, look, there is, as you pointed out, it's integrated. There is no difference between what happens at work and what happens at home, because what happens at home is coming with you to work. And it may actually be having a real detriment on that person's performance, and maybe the organization is in a place to help, or in a position to help. So that's where we are at right now. It's a process of learning and discovery. We are working on it. Work-life balance concept as a notion is now old and antiquated. Everything is work-life integration. And it's all about how easy and how much an organization can care for an individual and make an individual come forward with these issues. Because as a society, as a culture, I'm afraid we are not taught to talk about or look at our health and ourselves in a more emotional, honest and open way. But until such time as we do, I'm afraid we're going to have to struggle with low volunteer numbers and low program numbers and a lot of budgets going into places that then at the end of the year you're sitting in front of the CEO trying to justify and defend the ROI of things. But there's that practical element also.
Second question.
Thank you. Assalamualaikum, and thank you all of us for having such a great conversation. My question is for this small startups, हमारी बहुत सारा जो है इसमें यहाँ पे confusion है जैसे यंग साइड में हमने देखा कि काफी जो है वो एक अलग नैरेटिव चल रहा है और थोड़ा सा जो एक्सपीरियंस साइड है वो एक अलग नैरेटिव चल रहा है. तो एम्प्लॉय सेगमेंटेशन के लिए क्या चीज़ बेहतर रहेगी? फॉर एग्जांपल लाइक I'm asking this because जैसे आप लीडर्स बनाने के लिए क्या चीज़ जो है वो फॉलो कर सकते हैं, क्योंकि ये एक चीज़ है जो हमारी सोसाइटी के अंदर बहुत कम पाई जाती है कि किसी भी बंदे को ग्रूम करना, उसकी जो है बॉन्ड, जैसे लीडर्स कहते हैं कि बॉन्ड होता है. तो ये भी एक क्वेश्चन है मुझसे आपको, जैसे कि मोस्ट ऑफ यू आर रिस्पेक्टेड पर्सन इन ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस, तो क्या जो है ये लीडर्स बॉन्ड होते हैं या उनको ट्रेन करके लीडर्स बनाया जा सकता है फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, and then what is the ultimate formula of retention? That's my question.
Great question. Who would like to take this?
The great leaders born. I don't know.
Very good plan.
I don't know. LinkedIn पे डाल के देखें पता चल जाएगा आपको.
Indeed, the article about the India has an entire section on leadership. ये सवाल जो आपने किया इसमें हम एक दूसरा कॉन्फ्रेंस कर देते हैं. I'm not touching that.
No, it's a debate. I don't think. I think मेरा मानना ये है कि इवॉल्व हो सकता है एज अ पर्सन, एनी पर्सन कैन इवॉल्व हिमसेल्फ टू बिकम अ लीडर। कुछ ट्रेट्स होते हैं, कुछ ट्रेट्स चाहिए होते हैं आपको लीडर बनने के लिए, वो आपके अंदर होने चाहिए टू स्टार्ट ऑफ विद दैट थिंग that you deserve to be in that position. Nobody is going to give you a certificate. Nobody is going to give you an award कि आप लीडर है, चले ये ले ले तो फिर आप कंपनी स्टार्ट करेंगे. I don't think it's like that. I think it's up to you how you feel, what problem you're solving for. Employee retention की बात रही, I think the purpose and the value, मेरा जो मंत्र है वो purpose and value है. जितना आप उसको inculcate करेंगे in the business side of things, for whatever they're doing, regardless of what you're putting them through, you're hiring for a basic role or for a very skillful role. Values को बताएं अपने culture को, what are the reasons why you're doing it, how it is going to impact उसका size क्या है उसके impact का, और वो किसी की life में कैसे impact create कर सकता है. Because for me, like आपके लिए भी insurance it sounds very काफी वो है negative notions है पाकिस्तान के अंदर insurance के बारे में. And for me to attract talent, which was like अभी यूनिवर्सिटी से अगर किसी को उठाना है, हायर करना है, या किसी और अच्छी यूनिवर्सिटी से उठाना है, या someone who's got experience, for me it was a challenge, for real challenge कि यार इंश्योरेंस हम ये इंश्योरटेक कर रहे हैं और वो इंश्योरेंस कह रहा है पास में इंश्योरेंस कौन खरीदता है और हराम है, ठीक है ना, और इंश्योरेंस जो ना वो बहुत सारे से नेगेटिव नोशंस थे. So for me it was really difficult. I went through a real cycle of where I found someone that I wanted to hire and he rejected me. And that was happening quite often. People were rejecting us, my business, my startup, because they didn't believe it. And for what I understood after that was that you have to look for such people from the beginning, like who believe in your vision. And you have to sell yourself first. तो आप as a business, as a startup, आपको बहुत सेलिंग करनी पड़ती है किसी अच्छे टैलेंट को हायर करने, जो कि मैं नहीं कर रहा था. मैं बोला यार मैं जॉब दे रहा हूँ, मैं नौकरी दे रहा हूँ, मतलब आओ यार काम करो यार. And I learned that you have to sell yourself, you have to do employer branding, you have to do things, you have to build systems and processes and things that other people talk about you. Even your current employees, your resources, your talent talk to other people about it. And that's where you are able to find good talent. Then that's how people would like to work for you for a longer period of time, because all these things are in place. So I think that's how
I think we just like take one last question from her.
Hi, am I on? Hi, this is Nisha Iman, and I work as a research analyst, grade 1. So, actually, I have one comment, and I have one question. The comment that the conversation Bilal and Hesab was having on data and AI. So, see, you people were discussing the software levels. The thing is, I like to make my contribution on that conversation. The thing is, we make choices every day. I have a choice to go right, I have a choice to go left, right? I have a choice to meet different people. Thing is, our interaction changes, right? When we experience things and when we talk to people, our thinking alters, right? Our interaction changes. So no data can define what my future actions will be. Data can tell us what I have done or what is my present state, but you cannot predict for the future, like what I'm going to do. The thing is, we have a team that is working on the algorithms. Were looped in for the conversation. So they themselves, they were confused and were not at the final stage to say that they can incorporate that in the organization within the US as well. So and even if we quote the example of IBM, they were doing this, applying this AI in their workspace, like to speed up the process of the work for in ICT supply chain. So they applied there, and the Japanese man who was looking after that, even he was very much, he had become very sensitive when he was asked questions about the wrong algorithms he was able to put in the system, and the results were wrong. So the thing is, he was not sure about putting those algorithms in the workspace to speed up the process. So for doing that, mapping the human mind is far a long way to go. And incorporating that in Pakistan at this stage with the 70% of economy, which is not even having the proper literacy rate. So that's one possibility. If we apply those metrics and those, the question is coming to the question. Like what I've observed from the taken insight from the conversation that people are having, we are actually digitizing the manual processes in agriculture and chemicals and insurance and the e-commerce market and So we are actually banking, we are digitizing the manual processes, we are speeding up the things up. The thing is, we are actually reducing the interaction, human interaction, and we are also creating the spaces. Let's say banking is going to be digital in future. Digital licenses are being will be issued by the state bank. So banking is going to be digital. Now we won't be needing the digital traditional bank branches across Pakistan. So we are creating spaces over there, not over there, but in the market at e-commerce as well. Garage is there. So we won't be visiting Forum or Dolman Mall and we will be buying things online. We won't be going to restaurants more. The interaction will reduce. How we, you being futurist thinkers over here, how we are going to accommodate those spaces that we are creating and the interaction that we are reducing. The thing is, we are humans, we have the psychology. If today we are pushed toward one thing, we are going towards digital stuff. Now, when we will be over there, we will reach back to there. That empty space will be there, so how will you accommodate that empty space? Like, you are the futurist thinkers over there, you have explored that I don't have. So I need to have your insight. Thank you.
If you don't mind, I have I add to this question. How my Facebook and my Instagram likes are going to help you in my career planning, because I'm already being assessed in my workplace. So will I be even I feel like I'm being judged. I'm being judged 24/7. I'm being judged in the workplace as well, and now I have to be more.
I can give you more
what I do on my
I can give you
Instagram.
more detailed breakdown of what a lattice actually is and does. Your question is coming from a misunderstanding of what it is.
Probably.
Yes, it's not what you think it is.
Because
But the idea, but I will have to
Instagram
talk about
account
it. The point of bringing up lattice is that it is a tool for HR managers and planners to to be able to really help provide employees with better career path options that are more suited to their interests and their talents, not to their just what my assessment is. Now, we can talk about it much more in depth, but your question, and I understand your concern, but it's coming from a point where I don't think you understood what it actually is.
Invasive was a bit.
But
I think so.
I think so.
memes and very lame memes.
I think-
And,
No, I think no one's looking at that.
yeah.
No one's going to look at your meme.
I think the Netflix content social dilemma has already confused the example that you. So it was just given as an example, which is why I also tried covering it. And yes, I'm saying tried covering it and tried over explaining it with the analogy of a diary
Yeah.
of how am I doing. That's it. I don't want to know what choices you're making. I want you to know how you're doing.
Okay,
I have no interest in knowing that. I just want you to see the mirror. मेरे आने वाला कल मेरे गुजरे हुए कल से कभी बेहतर होगा जब मैं आईना देख सकूँ.
Exactly.
Thank you. Number one. Number two, मुझे नहीं जानना कि क्या likes और मुझे नहीं जानना. But क्या आपको पता होना चाहिए अगर हम उस बहस में पढ़ते नहीं, मैंने तो उसमें नहीं पढ़ा. लेकिन अगर पढ़ते तो क्या आपको नहीं पता होना चाहिए कि आप क्यों ऐसा कर रहे हैं? I want to know the answer to the why, because we discussed the why. Number one. Number two, not that we had any plans of being the mastermind and controlling the world, no.
But your HR department isn't going to rule your life.
Yes, please know this. Number one. Number two, अगर ऐसा होता तो HR को support function हम नहीं कह रहे हो.
हम CEO के ऊपर बैठे हुए हैं.
Yes, ठीक है. Gig economy हर तरीके से ऑपरेट करेगी. मगर आखिरी बात जो आपका सवाल था कि by the way सवाल क्या था? Sorry, spaces. Yeah, I don't know कि उसके लिए बाकी
It's a human interaction.
No,
So how are you going to accommodate it?
I just implemented this. And one of the things that Decibel has a lot of things going for it. One of the modules that we implemented in Decibel was a help desk. And we put a lot of policy related, and one of the other things that we're working on right now is that we are exploring ways in which we can get a chatbot going that ties to the knowledge center in Decibel. We're just exploring. I'm just saying, we're hypothetically, one of our plans is that we would have a chatbot, right? What if your logic is correct? What that's done is I have pretty much eliminated 90 to 99% of the reasons for an employee to go to HR. Which means all of a sudden there are a lot of empty spaces. That's, forgive me, in my view, bad design. You do not design for gaps. So when you sit down and you design a technology implementation, you're not just looking at the gaps you're creating, you're looking at what you're filling it with, or what it is enabling you to do in the future. So when we sat down and we looked at it as a team and as a company, that there will be a time gap. हमारे extensions इतने नहीं मिलेंगे, मुझे वो experience लेते चाहिए. Prime Minister का इस बैंक of Punjab से वो house loan का experience, मैंने वो stuff like that. क्योंकि वहाँ से बातें ज़्यादातर निकलती हैं. लोग HR से बात नहीं करना चाहते. HR आपसे बात करना चाहता है. So when you look at these gaps, you have to then sit down and see what can you fill that with, because what you call gap, I call an opportunity. We already have plans in place now within the team, and those processes are not going to kick off on Tuesday, inshallah. I should know some of them, where we will be filling those gaps with other things, with more process, with more initiatives, with more employee outreach, with something that's more deeper, more meaningful. What you are alluding to is part of the change process. It's part of any technology implementation. Gaps to come up. Allowing those gaps to remain, that's bad design. So don't look at technology implementation, look at the overall design and what you are trying to achieve, and then plan.
So I think you are focusing on the gaps. I'm talking about the spaces that
I think so. I think we need to wrap up the panel discussion by now. I think these things are a very, very long debate. There's like so much to talk on this topic, and every topic is an entire rabbit hole in its own right. So with that, thank you so much all distinguished panelists for being part of today's dialogue. It was lovely to have all of you. And all right. So yes. All right. Thank you. So Sumera would like to come forward and
Hello. I would like to thank all our panelists for their valuable contributions. Thank you so much. We have an exciting lineup of speakers who will share their unique contributions on rethinking and reimagining talent in a digital world. Starting with Fatma. Fatma Mahmood leads digital strategy and finance at JS Bank Zindagi, Pakistan's first customizable digital experience powered by JS Bank. She has worked with Ernst & Young, Pakistan Institute of Corporate Governance, Bold Group, Group M, Mindshare, and Sense of Technologies. She has been one of the key members behind the launch of Zindagi at JS Bank. Can you please have Fatma stay?
I think we've had a lot of tough conversations already. So I'm going to try and stay away from such conversations. But I'm going to focus on. Can you guys hear this? So the focus is, and the reason that I'm here today is to talk about how the generational shift that has come about in the past few years has affected our workplaces and has to impact how we as managers operate. So it's not only HR's responsibility to be accountable for HR, to be accountable for our practices, to be accountable for our culture that we create. It is each manager's right in their own domain to manage and ensure that all of our resources perform to the best and are enabled and empowered. And this is not to, and this is something very important when you keep in mind that when we are promoted to managers and senior managers and VPs and so on and so forth, we are not promoted on the basis of our HR management skills at all. The first time that you're given a team is because you've been doing well in your own silo, in your own workplace. You haven't been interacting with or managing the team when you're given a team. So that is also something that you have to learn and adapt to. 60% of Pakistan's population right now is between the age of 15 to 40. Our average age is 24 years old. So we have to accept the fact that the world has changed. It is not changing, it has changed. Today, there are people in your teams who will be more tech savvy, who will, there are situations where you have to deal with where junior is pointing out to your boss ये email में ये वाला option भी होगा ये missing सब बस teams में ऐसे करेंगे ना तो पीछे background change हो जाएगा. That happens. That is something that you have to take along. And that is something that you have to encourage but with respect. So a lot of the people that I deal with right now, and I'm coming in from various organizations, when I started off at Ernst & Young, so my first day at work, I had been very clearly informed कि ragging होगी. जब आप workplace join करेंगे ना, full fledged ragging होगी. जो सबसे junior बंदा होता है ना, trainee होता है, उसको सारी फोटोकॉपियां करनी होती है, उसको चाय बनानी होती है, उसको सारे उल्टे सीधे काम करने होते हैं, और अगर लड़का होगा उसको जाके रोल पार्टी में लेके आना. Today, when even a management trainee joins on your team, you have a welcome pack ready for them with a t-shirt and a bottle and a fancy tablet and all of those gestures. Why? Because the world has shifted. You realize that this generation is very different to our generation. We were treated very differently, but this generation needs to be treated differently because they are more sensitive. We recently, so Zindagi as a brand, was target audience is Gen Z and millennials. So we recently did a few fair and focus groups with these people. And we had a consultant on board. And the theme that came out of it was that this generation is the true generation. They believe in authenticity, they believe in connection. If you want them to be on board with you, you have to have them on the same page with you since day one. You can't impose a decision on them. They want to feel part of the decision-making process. They don't look for money. They don't care. Even if you're promising them a signing bonus, they don't care. They'd rather go to a startup with a vision that they really want. So you may be an organization that can ensure that the salary will come on the 21st of every month without fail. But they pick a startup over you where they're not sure when the salary will come, but they'll work for a mission that they do. And that was true of our organization as well. So within JS Bank right now, JS Bank as a whole has an average age of 40, 44, 45. The digital group within JS Bank has an average age of 33. That is how different we are. From even within the organization, we've created this separate organization that works independently. We're the only vertical, we're the only division that has its own HR business partner that sits with us. So there is a lot that we've acknowledged and changed about how we operate and manage. And that is imperative because if we want these people, the fourth largest gig economy in the world, to work with us for the betterment of our organizations, then we have to change the way how we operate. And we have to respect the fact that they need that acknowledgement, they need empowerment, they need to be seen and valued. And those values don't come from your performance appraisals or your bonuses or your guardia or home loans. They don't look for that. What they need from you is acknowledgement of the efforts that they're doing, of realizing and seeing how they form part of a bigger picture, how they're part of the brand that they're building. And I think that's key to where Zindagi has also come from, and this is also key to where all future organizations, including the startups, have seen the win-wins. And since I've been told that I'm short on time, I'll wrap up on that note. But it is imperative to realize that 60% of our future workforce is these people, so we might as well change ourselves. Am I audible?
Thank you, Fatma.
Now I would like to invite Sama Nini, one of the three co-founders of Curious, a Dubai-based early-stage startup, on a mission to accelerate 100 million careers. The platform makes it easy for emerging talent to learn in-demand skills from world-class industry experts. He was previously an entrepreneur in residence at Swill in Dubai, where he led global expansions across UAE, Jordan, and KSA. Now I would like to invite Sama to share his ideas on reinventing mentorship in the digital world.
Is this on? Perfect. Okay. Thank you so much, City Learning and Aisha, for obviously hosting such an amazing event. So the topic that I was given today to speak about is more towards reimagining mentorship in the way of the real world. It's one of the hardest things. We sort of still don't know how mentorship will look like in the digitized space. So I would just want to break this down into two things. Let's look at the traditional mentorship. Let's also look at the traditional digitalization and how has it changed the world today. So what is mentorship at core? Mentorship is sometimes defined as only in the professional setting. We really need to look at it a little differently. Mentorship, all of us went through the first mentorship that we all had as toddlers, how to speak the first word, which is amma, right? The first things that come up. And it's mentorship at core is anything and everything that helps you, advise you in a particular way to change the way that you could accelerate your professional or soft being itself. So now if we accelerate this further ahead, how do we look at mentorship that we saw in the room today in terms of this panelists that we heard from earlier today? These guys were talking about the futuristic things and stuff. A lot of us learned a few things. A lot of us might agree with some, might not agree with the others. But the most important thing is that this probably gave us a certain perspective of how to do something and how to not do the other things. So a lot of us, if we go back, and a lot of us have sort of heard from this phrase that we need to learn from our past. We need to learn from the past of our previous generations. How does that happen? It happens through books. You can read books. You can listen to different stories. But at the same time, you could also listen from the people on a one-on-one or a group session itself. Now, those people are the mentors. So this has been happening on professional, soft, and different beings at all times. Let's keep that aside. Now look at the digitization stuff. Digitization has been rapidly growing super fast over the period of time. Think of the times when we had to go out of our houses, put our hands up to find a cab and essentially hail a ride. Today we can do that on our phone, on our apps, right? And that accelerates your efficiency, your experience a lot more. But what is this actually doing? It is actually increasing the quality of living that you have, right? Now, if you bring mentorship and technology both together, what is really required is that how do you build up the quality of mentorship? It's not about only the access, because digitization can give you the access of global mentors across the globe, but I may not believe in this particular mentor. I may not want to sort of replicate what they have done. So the most important thing is the choice of listening to this particular mentor over the other, and every one of us should have that choice. And that should not be constrained based on the geographical location we are in, the sort of being that we are, the sort of network that we have. And the most important thing now this becomes is that how can I have a choice to learn sitting in a city of Larkana, for example, and having an access to someone in Microsoft in Seattle at every single time. Now, this is digitization or reimagining digitization in the mentorship space. It doesn't have to be global. I might want to learn from someone in Nigeria. How are they essentially revolutionizing the different ways of emerging talent? So, bringing all of this together, we are really on the cusp of trying to to accelerate the 100 million careers in a particular way, which is giving that particular access, that choice, and at the same time, the most importantly, have this talent available for most of the companies to come and choose from. So at Curious, the overall vision and the mission comes down to being that place where all the talent resides, emerging talent resides, where they can learn from top 1% mentors across the globe who they choose to be 1%. And at the same time, the companies can come in and cherry pick these talent. And this is what we're trying to do at Curious and hoping that other companies will follow the same suit. Thank you.
Thank you, brilliant idea.
Thank you so much, Sama. Moving on to our next topic, technology as an enabler of learning in education. Ms. Humana Sethi is an educationist and the author of national bestseller, The Environment of Pakistan, used as a textbook for Cambridge International Exams, GCE, O-Levels Pakistan Studies, since more than a decade. With around 2 decades of experience in the field of education, management, and advisory at Traction Grammar School and the City School PAF chapter. She is an active advocate of using technology as an enabler for learning in organizations. She's certified by the University of Cambridge in exploring leadership, teaching, and learning. I would like to invite Ms. Humana.
Good afternoon and assalamu alaikum. So today I'm going to discuss how we integrate technology and how it accelerates learning. So, the concept of learning has also been transformed over the years. And it is no more possession of knowledge. Knowledge is your palm. Like Google is there for all facts and all types of knowledge. So now our focus is on skill-based learning, acquisition of skills such as analytical skills, evaluative skills, metacognition, and various other types of skills they are needed. And they all leads to inquiry-based learning. And inquiry-based learning is highly facilitated by digitalization because with all these apps and with all these software available, there are various ways that teachers can teach and students can learn. So I must say that the learning. I don't say that technology can replace great teachers, but technology in the hands of great teachers can be transformational. So that is the core of, the whole discussion I'm going to have right now. And the various ways that technology or digitalization accelerates learning. First of all, it engages student and a lot of engagement and collaboration takes place. You might have seen a child looking at the iPod and he's not distracted at all. But you see so many people listening to lectures and they are either physically sleeping or mentally sleeping. Okay, so this is the way we catch attentions of a learner, and it is only possible if we help the students to get engaged and they also collaborate with their peers, collaborate with their teachers, instructors, and so many software, so many apps are available. The major, one which is very popular is Google Classroom. Then there's Choice Board, their Padlet, then their Google Docs, and then at concerts, there's so many, different types of softwares available where students they can collaborate with each other at the comfort of their homes, and they need not to move around and go for, panel discussions, go for discussions and other things. Another way how learning enables, how technology enables learning is inclusion. Inclusive might be familiar with inclusive classrooms, where the students of various abilities they're brought at par. Some students they might be dyslexia, they might have dyslexia or attention deficit disorder or ADHD or any sort of disorder. So there are certain types of software such as assistive technology which is available and which help these students to learn the way they are learning. For example, there are certain some students are slow in typing, so there are certain like speech to type, speech to text, so they can easily. The typing deficiency is covered up, and then their software also organizes their ideas because this is the world of ideas and not the world of knowledge. So sometimes the software they get them feedback, and they this helps a lot in that this type of softwares bring those students who are slow learners or who learn differently as par with other students. So this is one way. Another way is differentiated classroom. You know that all of us are different. We learn in our own ways, according to our interests, and we like to have different tools of learning. Maybe our destination might be the same, but the way, the journey, that might be different. So technology also provides various tools which enables students to learn the way they like to. It gives them a lot of choices. So there are two ways. Then technology also helps students to be more creative, to be more productive, because it saves a lot of time. That the time has passed when students used to go to library and then they get the topic of their choice, photocopy it, then filter out the information they need to. A lot of time was spent, but now the things have changed. A lot of time is saved in this way, money is saved, and then at the end, I would say that technology even opens the mind for all those students who have never got a chance to speak up. They might be the backbencher, they might be sitting at the back and just, distracted, but it makes them productive. So this is the way technology enables or accelerates learning. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Miss. Last but one of the most important topic of today's conversation is whether digital skills are an option or a need of the future workforce. The speaker for the topic is Mr. Asghar Hussain. Mr. Asghar Hussain, who has diverse experience of media, communication, marketing, hospitality, and administration in leading organizations. He is currently the program manager at the National Incubation Center, Karachi. He is an honorary advisor at Pakistan Academic Consortium. Mr. Hussain is also serving as Vice President CSR Club of Pakistan and is a member of Technical Committee on IT Security. So,
thank you. Thank you, Aisha, for the invitation and active participation of NIC Karachi, because we really want to help the ecosystem grow as well as enable. We really want to work with startups as well as corporations. So मेरी आखिरी speech है पर सबसे छोटी होगी. I think so the biggest tech to necessity and tech is option to बहुत आगे की चीज़. Just a small example, at the time of COVID, March 2020, we had this COVID outbreak. So interestingly, हम mentorship sessions कराते रहते हैं NIC और हम बुलाते हैं different mentors को. तो सब सोच ही रहे थे कि workshop कैसे होंगे, ये model किस तरह बनेगा. जाहिर है we used to have Zoom use करते थे, but ना regularly नहीं करते थे. And within a month, we got calls from all over. कि आपने Zoom पे कराना कैसे शुरू किया? Although हमारे 2-3 sessions were impacted with Zoom bombing, someone hacking into our room, and then we learned our way. So this is just one example. Many of the startups pivoted during that time, and it is all because of their digital skills, their digital power. And some of the mental health counseling startups, कोई सोच भी नहीं सकता था कि mental health आप through a digital platform बता रहे होंगे. उन्होंने they raised money during this COVID time. What kind of skills? I think some skills. So थोड़ी सी I don't want to be a negative बात नहीं करना चाहता, but skills यहाँ पे बहुत ज़्यादा पाकिस्तान में चैलेंज आता है. When you ask a techie, do you have full stack developers? Do you have someone working on the platform you really need? उनको बहुत ज़्यादा challenge आते हैं. So वो digital skills बहुत सारी हमारी universities lack करती हैं in terms of, especially in terms of training future CTOs, be it system architects, someone who will get this CTO role or a tech role. So सबसे ज़्यादा जो ज़रूरत है, I think so it's we need more programmers, we need more coders. Probably there can be a no code world, लेकिन अभी तक तो ये है कि we need coding, we need design skills. We need someone who can have a good architecture skills in terms of UI, UX, उनको बनाना आता हो. So this is essentially important. And then we have government programs like Digi Skills that are really helping Pakistani that are very grassroots. We have people from the Silani welfare doing an amazing job. I think so they are one of the largest programs in terms of giving digital skills. It might not be celebrated as it should be, but it's a great program. There are other programs as well. So main digital skills, all those who are doing NBL enablers supporting it, I think so this is the way forward. It's not an option, it's a necessity, it's absolutely important. And we have seen how startups and great businesses have grown, especially COVID has really taught us that digital skills are absolutely important. So I just met Fintech, and I think InsurTech, FinTech, this is the time for Pakistan where all these startups will either get investment, at the same time they will need more tech skills in their workforce as well. So thank you, and we need more techies around. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. This brings us towards the end of Talent and Technology Reimagined Conference 2022. This entire concept, this conference has been nothing but a labor of love and support of all our partners. I'm so grateful to each one of you. Would not have been able to do it without you. Starting with advertising, Ajigo, Catalyst Corporation, TCS, Optara, Kickstart, our venue partner, this beautiful place. Thanks to everybody, we've been able to put this conference together. The entire concept behind coming this was that we need to actively not only start talking, but seriously rethinking our way out of things, because we need more people who are thinkers rather than just followers. The culture of thinking is in dirt. There's a shortage of supply of thought leaders, and that was the idea to get everyone start thinking. So with that, I would like to proceed towards the distribution of word of thanks to all our guests. So can we please have Sumera for that? Thank you.
I would like to thank all our speakers.